Welcome to my channel. Support our channel by subscribing. Your subscription helps us grow and create more intriguing content like this. Now, let's dive into today's story. Title: New Year's Party. I caught my cheating wife flirting and slammed her lover's face into the table. Leon Hartman, a 32-year-old successful businessman, is loyal, calm, and deeply values trust, hosting annual New Year's Eve parties to celebrate with loved ones. His wife, Alina, 29, is beautiful, charming, and social, but often craves validation, blurring the line between fun and disloyalty. Ethan Hale, 34, Leon's friend and business associate, is charismatic and flirtatious, with a habit of crossing boundaries. Meanwhile, Emma Wolf, Alina's best friend, is sharp, observant, and fiercely loyal to Leon, acting as the voice of reason when cracks in the Hartmans' marriage start to surface. It was New Year's Eve, and Leon's house was alive with music, laughter, and glasses clinking. Friends mingled, the champagne flowed, and confetti glittered on the tables. Leon stood proudly, looking around. This was his favorite night of the year. But then something caught his eye. Across the room, his wife Alina sat far too close to his friend, Ethan Hale. At first, it was just a laugh here and there, nothing unusual. But then he noticed it, the lingering eye contact, Ethan whispering something into Alina's ear that made her giggle like a schoolgirl. Leon's smile froze. Was this innocent flirting, or something more? He tried to shake it off, but a voice inside him whispered, "Watch closer." The house buzzed with energy, music booming, glasses clinking, and laughter echoing across the crowded rooms. But for Leon, the festive cheer began to feel like white noise. His attention was locked on Alina, who sat on the plush corner sofa with Ethan Hale. At first glance, it seemed innocent. Alina's laughter rang out, soft and melodic, as Ethan leaned in close, murmuring something Leon couldn't hear. But it wasn't the laughter that unnerved Leon. It was the way she laughed. The kind of laugh reserved for private moments, intimate ones. Leon's jaw tightened as he took a sip of his drink, his eyes narrowing. Ethan's hand casually brushed Alina's arm as she playfully swatted him away. It might have seemed harmless to anyone else, but to Leon, it was an ember of doubt sparking into a flame. "Leon," a soft voice pulled him from his daze. He turned to see Emma Wolf, Alina's best friend. Emma, always perceptive, had noticed his tension. "You all right?" she asked, her eyes darting toward the sofa. Leon's voice was low. "You see it too, don't you?" Emma hesitated but nodded. "I've been watching them for a while now. Alina's acting different. It's too much for just friendly fun, Leon." A lump formed in Leon's throat. His heart, which had always trusted Alina without question, now pulsed with uncertainty. His gaze returned to his wife and Ethan. Another whisper, another giggle. Emma spoke again, her tone careful but firm. "You need to decide how long you're going to let this go on." Leon didn't answer. The doubt was growing, spreading like poison. Something wasn't right. The clock neared midnight, and the countdown began. People cheered, champagne glasses were topped off, and couples huddled together in anticipation of the new year. Leon watched as Alina and Ethan remained inseparable. Ethan leaned in once again, whispering into Alina's ear. Her smile widened, and she placed her hand on his knee. Just for a moment, but long enough to make Leon's blood boil. That was it. Enough. Leon set his drink down with a hard thud, his face stone cold as he marched across the room. Conversations hushed as he reached the table, towering over the pair. "Having a good time?" Leon's voice cut through the air, sharp and controlled. Ethan leaned back in his chair, a lazy smirk playing on his lips. "Relax, Leon. We're just talking." Leon's glare shifted to Alina, whose expression wavered between shock and guilt. "Just talking?" Because from where I'm standing, it looks like something very different. Alina opened her mouth to speak, but Ethan beat her to it. "You're overreacting. It's just a bit of fun." Leon's patience snapped like a twig. "Fun?" he spat. "You've spent the whole night whispering in my wife's ear, putting your hands all over her. You think I don't see it?" Ethan chuckled dismissively. Oh, come on, man, don't embarrass yourself. That was the final straw. In one swift motion, Leon grabbed Ethan by the collar, yanking him to his feet. Before anyone could react, Leon slammed Ethan's face down onto the table with a resounding crack. Glasses and plates rattled, and a gasp rippled through the room. Leon, stop! Alina screamed, rising to her feet. Blood dripped from Ethan's nose as he stumbled back, his smirk completely gone. Leon pointed a shaking finger at him, his voice low and venomous.
How dare you disrespect me in my own home? Ethan didn't dare reply. The crowd fell into an awkward silence as Leon turned to Alina, his voice cracking. And you, we're going to talk. Now. Behind closed doors, the noise of the party felt miles away. Leon stood at the window, fists clenched, staring out into the dark. Alina hovered near the edge of the couch, arms wrapped around herself like a shield. Leon, she started softly. He turned to face her, his eyes filled with hurt and frustration. What the hell was that, Alina? What were you thinking? It was nothing, she insisted, her voice pleading. We were just talking, joking. You're blowing this out of proportion. Joking. Leon's voice rose, his disbelief palpable. You think sitting there letting him touch you, giggling like that, like you're single, is a joke? Alina looked away, guilt flickering across her face. I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear, Leon, it didn't mean anything. Leon's chest ached. Then why, Alina? Why let it get to that point? Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for me? For us? Tears welled in Alina's eyes. I don't know, she whispered. I guess. I liked the attention. I didn't think it would hurt you like this. I was wrong, Leon. I'm so sorry. The confession hung heavy in the air. Leon shook his head, his voice quieter now. You let another man come between us. Tonight of all nights. I don't know if I can just forget that. Alina stepped forward, tears streaming now. Please, Leon. I messed up. It won't happen again. You have to believe me. Leon looked at her for a long moment, his heart torn between anger and the love he still felt. I don't know if I can trust you, Alina, he finally said. Trust isn't something you play games with. The silence was deafening. Outside, fireworks erupted, signaling midnight. But for Leon, the new year didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a line had been crossed. Hours later, as guests trickled out, Leon stood by the window, his expression distant. He watched the fireworks light up the night sky, their explosions echoing through the quiet house. Emma approached him cautiously, her voice soft. Leon, are you okay? He sighed, his shoulders heavy. I don't know, Emma. I thought Alina and I were stronger than this. Emma placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Sometimes it takes moments like this to see things clearly. You deserve respect, Leon. You did the right thing tonight, standing up for yourself. Leon nodded, though his heart still ached. I just never thought I'd be here, questioning her, questioning us. Emma gave a small, sad smile. Trust is fragile, Leon. But now you know. You'll never settle for less than what you deserve. As the last of the fireworks faded, Leon turned away from the window. The new year had arrived, but for him it wasn't about fresh starts or resolutions. It was about facing the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Wow, what a night for Leon! What would you have done in his shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Alina deserved forgiveness? Or was Leon right to call her out? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with your friends. And of course, subscribe for more stories like this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, and Happy New Year!
Luca Müller, 42, a respected architect from Berlin, dedicated to his family and career. He is deeply committed to his work, which often consumes his time, but he prides himself on being a good father and husband. Though quiet and reflective, Luca is sharp and discerning. always noticing the little details. Lately, he's been feeling a growing distance from his wife, but has attributed it to the pressures of their respective careers. Emilia Muller, 38. Originally from Milan, Emilia is a successful project manager at a prestigious tech firm in Munich. She's known for her beauty, sharp intelligence, and the way she effortlessly commands a room. Over the last few years, as her career has soared, her connection with Luca has grown strained. Though she loves her husband, she's found herself drawn to the attention and power of others, particularly her boss. Emilia is a woman at a crossroads, torn between her responsibilities and the thrill of temptation. Alexander Weber, 50. The CEO of the tech firm Emilia works for, Alexander is a powerful, commanding figure in the business world. His reputation for ruthless business tactics is matched only by his charm and charisma. Married 3 times, Alexander is no stranger to scandals. He's accustomed to getting what he wants, and recently, his attentions have been focused on Emilia. Alexander sees himself as invincible, unaware of the consequences that are soon to catch up with him. Luca Muller hadn't always been the type of man to question his wife's loyalty. Their relationship had always been built on mutual respect, deep love, and shared dreams. He and Emilia met in their late 20s at a design conference in Paris, both enamored with the creativity and ambition the other exuded. Luca, at the time, was an up-and-coming architect, and Emilia, a freshly graduated project manager with dreams of conquering the corporate world. Their love story had been one for the ages, fast, passionate, and seemingly unbreakable. Over the years, Luca had worked tirelessly to build his career, becoming one of the most sought-after architects in Berlin. His dedication meant long hours in the studio, but Emilia had always been supportive, understanding that this was the life they had chosen. As her own career began to flourish in the fast-paced tech industry, their lives became a whirlwind of business meetings, work dinners, and international travel. But with success came distance. Luca began to notice subtle changes in Emilia. The once lively conversations at the dinner table had been replaced by silence. Her phone seemed to buzz more frequently, and she often came home late, citing work emergencies. She looked at him less, spent more time in front of the mirror before heading to work, and their once intimate evenings were now filled with distant goodnights. The turning point came when Emilia's boss, Alexander Weber, entered the picture. Emilia had spoken of him in passing before, a brilliant but demanding leader who often pushed his employees to the limit. Weber had a reputation in the industry for being ruthless and unyielding, but he was also charismatic and knew how to charm those around him. Luca didn't think much of it initially, assuming it was simply part of Emilia's demanding job. But as time passed, Alexander's name came up more often. He was the one Emilia was constantly texting. He was the one calling late at night for work advice. And, as Luca discovered, he was the one Emilia had been meeting for after-work drinks. Still, Luca chose to trust his wife, convincing himself that it was nothing more than professional camaraderie. After all, Emilia had always been faithful, hadn't she? The company holiday party. The company's holiday party was held in Munich at one of the city's most luxurious hotels. Emilia had invited Luca weeks in advance, but he was hesitant. He never enjoyed these corporate gatherings, fake smiles, shallow conversations, and the ever-looming feeling that he didn't quite fit into Emilia's world anymore. However, Emilia insisted, almost uncharacteristically eager for him to attend. She had been working tirelessly on an important project for months, and this was her chance to celebrate with her colleagues. "It'll be good for you to meet everyone," she had said with a bright smile. "Plus, I want to show you off. You're my talented architect husband." Her charm worked, and Luca reluctantly agreed. The party was grand, just as he had imagined. Lavish decorations, soft jazz music playing in the background, and the scent of expensive perfume and cologne hanging in the air. As they entered the ballroom, Luca couldn't help but feel slightly out of place among the tech moguls and their glamorous spouses. Emilia, on the other hand, was in her element. She floated through the crowd effortlessly, greeting colleagues and clients with an easy grace. Luca watched her from a distance, admiring how beautiful she looked in her emerald green dress. Luca watched her from a distance, admiring how beautiful she looked in her emerald green dress, her dark hair cascading down her shoulders. But something was off. Her smile seemed a little too forced, her laughter too exaggerated. There was a tension in the air that Luca couldn't quite put his finger on. As the night wore on, Luca began to notice Emilia's interactions with Alexander Weber. At first, it was subtle, a lingering glance here, a soft laugh there. But as the champagne flowed, their proximity grew. Alexander's hand would find its way to Emilia's back as they talked, their heads bending close together in whispered conversations. Luca's stomach tightened. He tried to convince himself that it was all innocent. Emilia was simply being friendly with her boss, wasn't she? He excused himself to the bar, ordering a stiff drink to calm his nerves. But the unease gnawed at him, a growing suspicion that he couldn't shake. It was then that he overheard snippets of a conversation between two of Emilia's colleagues. "I mean, it's obvious, right?" one woman whispered to the other. "Everyone knows what's going on between Emilia and Weber. They've been spending so much time together lately. It's practically written all over her face." Luca's heart dropped, his hands clenched around his glass, the room suddenly feeling suffocating. Could it be true? Could Emilia really be involved with her boss? He had to know. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Luca decided to follow his instincts. He had noticed Emilia and Alexander slipping away from the main ballroom earlier, heading toward the terrace. The terrace was secluded, with a stunning view of the snow-covered city below. It was a romantic spot, one that Luca had visited with Emilia many times before on their trips to Munich. His heart pounded in his chest as he approached the terrace doors, each step feeling heavier than the last. He could hear faint voices, the sound of laughter, and then silence. Pushing the door open slightly, Luca peeked out, his worst fears coming to life before his eyes. There, under the soft glow of the string lights, was Emilia. Her back was turned to him, but he recognized her immediately. The way her dress shimmered in the moonlight, the way her hair fell in soft waves. And standing in front of her, with his hand resting on her waist, was Alexander Weber. Luca's breath caught in his throat as he watched them, unable to move. They were too close, far too close for it to be just a friendly conversation. Emilia's face was flushed, her eyes locked onto Alexander's. And then, before Luca could process what was happening, she leaned in. The kiss was soft, brief, but it was enough. Enough to shatter everything Luca had believed in. His world crumbled around him as he watched his wife, the woman he had loved and trusted for so many years, share an intimate moment with another man. Time seemed to stand still. Luca felt numb, his mind racing, as he struggled to comprehend the betrayal unfolding before him. He had to leave, had to get away before he lost control. Without making a sound, he turned and walked back into the ballroom, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had just witnessed. Luca spent the next few days in a haze, unable to confront Emilia. He needed time to think, to process what he had seen. Emilia, oblivious to his discovery, continued on as if nothing had changed. She was cheerful, affectionate even, as if trying to make up for the distance that had grown between them over the past few months. But Luca couldn't bring himself to meet her gaze. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table in their Berlin apartment, Luca finally broke his silence. "I saw you," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Emilia froze, her fork hovering in midair. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone cautious. "At the party," Luca continued, his eyes fixed on his plate. "With Alexander, I saw everything." The color drained from Emilia's face as the weight of his words sank in. She set her fork down slowly, her hands trembling. "Luca, don't," he interrupted, his voice firmer now. Don't lie to me, Amelia. I know what I saw. Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes as she looked at him, her guilt finally catching up to her. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking. It was a mistake. I never meant for this to happen. Luca's heart ached as he listened to her, the pain of her betrayal cutting deep. Why? He asked, his voice barely audible. Why him? Why now? Amelia wiped away her tears, struggling to find the words. I don't know, she admitted, her voice filled with regret. I was lonely. You've been so busy with work, and She trailed off, unable to finish. Luca looked at her, his eyes filled with sorrow. I was busy because I thought we were building a life together, he said softly. I thought we were a team. Amelia broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm so sorry, Luca. I never wanted to. Eventually, Luca made the difficult decision to leave. It wasn't easy. There were tears, apologies, and moments of hope. But in the end, he knew that their relationship would never be the same. They parted ways amicably, both knowing that their love had been irreparably damaged. As Luca packed his bags and walked out of their shared apartment for the last time, he felt a sense of closure. He had loved Amelia deeply, but sometimes love wasn't enough. The betrayal had left a scar that would take time to heal. But Luca knew that he would eventually find peace. Looking out at the snowy streets of Berlin, Luca took a deep breath and walked forward, ready to start a new chapter in his life. Thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts, questions, or comments about this story, feel free to leave them below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more compelling tales.
Growing up in Lansing, Illinois, I learned the harsh realities of survival. My father's misuse shaped my resilience, and my mother's silence taught me self-reliance. By my teenage years, I had become adept at navigating the rough streets of Chicago's South Side, where ambition and guile often determined who succeeded and who failed. While others clung to hope in traditional avenues, I found opportunities in unconventional ventures, some less than legal. This gritty upbringing forged the mindset I'd need for the battles ahead. Years later, I poured my tenacity into legitimate enterprises, real estate vending services, and a coin exchange business spanning the region. Though my operations flourished, my personal life faltered. Marrying Lillian seemed like a dream initially, but as her ambitions clashed with my simpler desires, our bond unraveled. Her escalating betrayals and my refusal to accept defeat sowed the seeds for a storm that neither of us could escape. The court ruled against me in almost every way possible. I was ordered to provide $2,000 a month in alimony, $1,000 in child support, and cover the mortgage and health insurance until my daughter, Regina, reached adulthood, or longer if she pursued higher education. The total burden exceeded $6,500 monthly. My ex-wife, Lily, whose affairs with her firm's lawyers were no secret, had managed to manipulate the system to bleed me dry. I'm Kurt D'Angelo. My ex-wife is Lillian, and our daughter, Regina, is my pride and joy. Daddy's little girl, without a doubt. I took her to fun places when I could. She even told the judge she wanted to live with me, but he ignored her. The whole process was a farce. Lily had a job and didn't need my financial support on top of the mortgage and other payments. I felt cheated, and I suspect the judge was biased. I didn't take it lying down. I started planning my revenge. I can be vindictive when wronged, a trait honed growing up in Lansing, Illinois on Chicago's South Side. People there know how to settle scores. Some call me an entrepreneur. I just see opportunities and seize them. Admittedly, not all my early ventures were legal. Now I own rental properties, vending machines, and a coin-changing business similar to Coinstar, which operates across Chicagoland and northern Indiana. That business gave me an idea for how to pay Lily, entirely in coins. Let her haul them to the bank. Lily worked part-time after Regina started school, then became a paralegal. She climbed the ranks quickly, helped by her looks, I suspect. At the time, I supported her career, clueless about the reality. As she advanced, her attitude changed. She wanted a fancier lifestyle, pressuring me to move to an upscale neighborhood. Reluctantly, I agreed, though I kept our Oak Forest house as a rental property. We bought a $900,000 house in Wilmette, which she filled with expensive furniture. I never felt at home there. It marked the beginning of our downfall. I preferred a modest life, while she wanted to flaunt her success. After our divorce, I decided to follow the court's orders exactly, but on my terms. Regina's child support went into an account just for her. She had excellent health insurance, but Lily only got catastrophic coverage with a high deductible. When the first spousal support payment was due, I arranged for an armored truck to deliver it, all in coins. When Lily answered the door with one of her lawyer friends, the drivers unloaded bag after bag of change onto her marble floor. Neighbors gathered, curious about the commotion. I stood across the street filming as Lily screamed at me. I waved and shouted, "Enjoy your money, strumpet," before driving off. On Tuesday, a man approached me and asked, "Are you Kurt D'Angelo?" I ignored him. He repeated the question louder, then snapped a picture of me holding a subpoena. When I didn't take it, he threw it on the ground, said, "You've been served," and left. After making sure he was gone, I picked it up. I had court the following Wednesday, a week to prepare. I spent the week making calls, setting appointments, and planning. I also took my daughter, Regina, to lunch. She was furious with her mother, calling her a terrible person. Regina told me she wanted to live with me again, but her mother wouldn't agree. I told her I'd fight in court, even if it landed me in jail. She begged me not to get violent. I reassured her, explaining I'd set up a trust for her, with her uncle as trustee, ensuring her needs were met, none of it going to her mother. "She doesn't deserve anything," Regina said, showing her growing maturity. On court day, Regina, my lawyer, and I waited for our case to be called. Lily arrived with her lawyer, sneering at me. "You better stick to the rules." I simply replied, "Wait and see." When the judge called my name, Regina stood first, declaring she wanted to live with me, not her mother. The judge reprimanded her for her tone and dismissed her claim, citing a psychiatrist's report alleging inappropriate behavior on my part. I was stunned. Lily had weaponized an old report from Regina's therapy sessions to frame me as a carnivore. My lawyer objected, stating no charges were ever filed. The judge shut him down, refusing to reconsider. Lily's attorney then requested I be held in contempt, claiming child support wasn't paid. My lawyer countered, explaining the money had gone directly to Regina for her needs, verified by canceled checks. Regina nodded, backing up the claim. Frustrated, Lily's lawyer shifted tactics, complaining about spousal payments in coins, calling it an intolerable hardship. The judge agreed, saying payments should be made by check. My lawyer quickly challenged this, asking if the Chicago Police Department, part of the legal system, could insist on cash or card for fines. The judge hesitated. "If they can refuse checks, why can't my client pay in legal tender?" My lawyer pressed. Embarrassed and defensive, the judge retorted, "This is my court and what I say goes." His bias was clear, but I could see Lily and her lawyer scrambling. This wasn't over. My vindictive side was just getting started. I'd had enough. Rising from my seat, I glared at the judge. "You're the law? Or just here to please my wife's law firm? Was she a strumpet for you too?" The judge's face turned red as he exploded. "Mr. D'Angelo, you're in contempt of court. 6 months in Cook County Jail unless you apologize and comply with my conditions." I shot back without hesitation. "Who are you, king of this kangaroo court?" The judge, visibly shocked, barked an order to the bailiff. "Take him into custody." As the bailiff led me away, I turned to Lily, my estranged wife, and sneered, "Good luck getting your money, witch." Her expression was a mix of fury and confusion. She had no idea how much her life was about to change. Once at the jail, I was processed, strip-searched, fingerprinted, and escorted to a cell. 2 guards tried to intimidate me, asking why I disrespected the judge, but I wasn't fazed. At 6'4" and 255 pounds, years of hard labor had kept me strong, and my time in juvie had long ago stripped me of fear. The next day, in the yard, I kept to myself, watching everything from the shadows. During the evening meal, as I stood eating against the wall, a familiar voice called out, "Tex!" I turned, spotting Ringer, an old friend from my delinquent youth. We embraced, drawing curious glances from the other inmates. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low but amused. "Told a judge he's an a-hole," I said flatly. Ringer chuckled. "How long they give you?" 6 months, unless I apologize, which isn't happening. We found a quiet spot to catch up. Ringer knew me too well, especially my penchant for revenge. I told him about Lily, her lawyer friends, and the judge who thought he could crush me. "They'll regret crossing me," I vowed. Ringer gave a knowing nod. "You always had a plan, Tex. Need help?" "Maybe, I replied. "But for now, just having you here is enough." Ringer grinned. "Well, you know I've got your back." For the first time since this mess began, I felt a sliver of control return. That night in my bunk, I reflected. My rough childhood shaped me. My dad was an abusive drunk, and my mom never stood up for me. I escaped to the streets, finding others like me. We weren't a gang, just kids trying to survive. We committed petty crimes and stole cars, which eventually got me locked up. Oddly, that experience turned my life around. It forced me to rethink my choices and build a plan for the future. Now, I had to plan again, but this time, for payback. By age 20, I had saved enough to buy a foreclosed house in my neighborhood, the first of many I renovated and rented out. At 22, I was at a club trying my luck when I met Lily. I barely remember the place. It's since been replaced by condos. That night, I thought I struck gold. Lily had just moved to Chicago from Seymour, Indiana, a small town famous for being John Mellencamp's hometown. Her small-town charm and fresh outlook on life intrigued me. We hit it off, opposites attracting. A year later, we married. The following year, Regina was born, named after Lily's mother. I bought a house in Oak Forest intending to rent it out, but Lily loved it and insisted we make it our home. Over the next decade, we renovated it together, raised our daughter, and hosted neighborhood barbecues. It felt like the perfect life, the American dream. Things changed when Lily got a job at a law firm. She outgrew our simple life, craving expensive clothes, jewelry, and fancy dinners with her colleagues instead of neighborhood get-togethers. She also began looking down on the south side of Chicago, where we lived. Her growing arrogance led to frequent arguments. Eventually, she pressured me to move to the north side. 3 years ago, we made the move, partly for the better schools. But Regina hated it. Her new classmates' snobbery made her miserable. She wanted to go back, and so did I, but Lily refused to listen. She was exactly where she wanted to be. Our marriage began unraveling one evening when she called, claiming she was attending a dance with colleagues. Suspicious, I tracked her phone and went to check. Hidden in the shadows, I watched her dancing provocatively with a group of men. Around 9:15, I overheard 2 guys in the restroom boasting about their encounters with Lily, including quick trysts in cars and plans for proper fun later that night. When I returned, I saw her making out on the dance floor with one of the men. At 9:30, she texted me, claiming she was too drunk to take the L and would stay with Paula, a colleague. Then she sent another message saying, "I'm sorry." She would be sorry. I followed her as she left the club, hand in hand with a younger lawyer. They didn't notice me as they climbed into his Lexus, kissing and groping. My anger subsided as I started planning my next move. I followed them to his building, noting every detail. It was time for payback. When I arrived, I found Regina waiting anxiously. I looked her in the eyes and said firmly, "We're leaving for good. Pack everything you want to take with you." She hesitated for a moment, then asked quietly, "What about Mom?" "There are other guys taking care of her now," I replied, my voice cold but resolute. Regina's expression shifted. She understood immediately. Without another word, we worked quickly. In 3 hours, the truck was loaded and we left, heading to my vacant house in Oak Forest. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Lily. "Kurt, what's going on? Where are you?" she demanded. "Home," I said bluntly. "Why?" she pressed, though her tone betrayed that she already knew the answer. "I don't know you anymore, Lily, and I don't want to," I replied, my voice flat with finality. Her voice trembled slightly. "Where's Regina?" "She's with me," I said firmly. "She doesn't want to live with you anymore." Lily tried to argue, saying I couldn't just walk away. "No, Lily, but your fun with other men is reason enough to leave. Expect divorce papers next week." Her response was venomous. "You Southsider piece of crap, my firm will destroy you." "Maybe," I said, "but you haven't seen my full wrath yet." Over 6 months, Lily never tried to reconcile. She openly bragged about dating lawyers, and Regina told me Lily was out late almost every night, bad-mouthing me and pushing Regina to find a rich husband someday. Regina defended me, saying she wanted to return to Oak Forest. Now, lying in jail, I imagined Lily thought she'd won. But I knew she'd struggle to manage the mortgage, health insurance, and spousal support without me. Jail wasn't breaking me. It was giving me time to plan. On Thursday, 2 guards summoned me to a video room. I protested, asking for my lawyer, but they shoved me inside, saying, "You're not meeting the judge. You're being sentenced." When I resisted, they locked the door, leaving me to yell in frustration. Minutes later, they let 6 inmates in. I knew their intent and prepared to fight. "You'll regret this," I warned. One lunged and I broke his nose. Then the rest attacked. I fought hard, punching, kicking, and pinning some against the wall, but a larger man got me in a chokehold. I swung until I blacked out. I woke in the infirmary, battered and in pain, knowing what had happened. The nurse approached, her face calm but firm. "I'm here to help you," she said. "You can accept it or suffer." Her honesty softened me. I nodded and managed, "Thank you." She brought me breakfast and freed one hand so I could eat. "Can I ask a favor?" I said cautiously. "That depends," she replied. "My friend Randall Turner, can I see him?" "We'll see," she said, leaving it vague. Later, Ringer visited. Seeing my condition, he muttered, "Oh, crap." I described the 6 inmates and 2 guards responsible. "I need their full names, not nicknames," I said. Ringer hesitated. "What are you planning?" "An eye for an eye," I said, but with a twist. Ringer saw the look in my eyes and understood what it meant. This wouldn't end well for certain people. "I'll get the info you need," he said. "What else?" "That's it. I'll handle the rest." The next day, Ringer handed me the list he'd promised. "What are you going to do with it?" he asked, curiosity and concern in his voice. "The less you know, the better," I replied firmly, pocketing the paper. Sunday brought an unexpected visit, Lily and Regina. Lily wasted no time breaking the tension. "So, how's life with your new cellmates?" she sneered, her tone dripping with mockery. I scowled. "What do you want?" "Regina insisted on coming," she said with a shrug before smirking. "Ready to apologize yet?" "Not a chance," I snapped. "And stop spreading lies about me and Regina. You know they're not true." Her eyes gleamed with malice. "How do I know that? She's unusually attached to you." I stared at her in disgust. "You're disgusting. Go back to your boyfriends and leave me alone." With a smug smile, Lily turned and left. But I caught the look on Regina's face, anger and heartbreak simmering just below the surface. Once Lily was gone, Regina rushed into the room and burst into tears when she saw me. "Don't cry, sweetheart. It looks worse than it is," I said gently, trying to reassure her. "I hate Mom for this," she sobbed. "For lying, for making me live with her. She's horrible." "I know," I said softly, pulling her into a hug. Wiping her eyes, she straightened up. "Don't call me Regina anymore. I'm Gina now. I don't want anything to do with her or her family." I looked at her, proud of her defiance. "Gina, you're just like me," I said with a small smile. "We'll show them." We sat and talked for a while, the weight of the visit slowly lifting. Then I leaned closer and asked, "Can you do something for me?" She nodded without hesitation. "Anything, Dad." I handed her the list Ringer gave me. She tucked it into her bra. "Give this to Uncle Ken and tell him to visit me." Ken, my younger brother, had always been the brains of the family. While I protected him from our abusive father growing up, he buried himself in computers and became an expert. That divide made us a formidable team in our own way. After sharing some final words, Gina hugged me tightly before walking out, deliberately ignoring Lily. As she left, Lily called after her, muttering, "Stubborn girl," before following her out the door. On Tuesday, Ken came to visit. His eyes widened in shock at my bruises and battered state. "Looks better than Friday," I joked, flashing a crooked grin. He smiled faintly, then glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Switching to the secret language we'd used as kids, he said, "Gina gave me a list. What do you need?" I leaned forward and said evenly, "Addresses of their wives or girlfriends." Ken let out a low whistle. "Oh, crap. Just get the info and pass it to Gummy. Tell him to come see me, but without the list." Gummy was an old friend from the neighborhood, someone I trusted with certain tasks. Ken nodded, though his expression was uneasy. "I'll take care of it. Anything else?" "Just visit when you can," I said. "I could use a friendly face." Ken frowned. "Won't you be out soon?" "Not unless I apologize," I replied firmly. "And you know I won't." "You've always been stubborn," he said. "Kept you safe from Dad, didn't it?" I replied. He smiled, knowing I was right. "I'll check in soon," he promised. Back in my cell, Ringer warned me. Things are about to get rough, but they don't know why yet. The guards and the 6 inmates who attacked me made their threat clear with their glares, but they had no idea they'd soon pay the price. Gummy visited and asked, "Ken gave me this. What's the plan?" "Did Ken tell you what they did to me?" I asked. He nodded. "Return the favor, hit their loved ones. No DNA evidence. Use Steely Dan or his flexible cousins," I said. He understood. "Do it all at the same time and make sure they hear, 'Don't mess with Texas.'" "I'll get my guys," he said, leaving with determination. A week later, I noticed 2 guards were missing, and one of the 6 inmates seemed distraught. I suspected the plan had been executed. Soon, prisoners began calling me Tex, and the 6's angry stares confirmed it. When one of them confronted me, Ringer's group surrounded us for protection. "You're a piece of crap," the inmate spat. "My girlfriend dumped me. She said she didn't want to risk getting hurt and mentioned, 'Don't mess with Texas.'" Smirking, I replied, "Sounds like solid advice. Now your women know what it feels like. You hurt me. I hurt those you care about. Next time, it'll be your mother's." His face fell, and he retreated to his group. Later, 2 guards confronted me, threatening to make my life miserable. "Then I guess your wives better get used to new attention," I said coldly. One guard snapped and started knocking me in front of the others. I didn't fight back. After a few minutes, another guard pulled him away, but not before prisoners and cameras witnessed it all. I was taken to the infirmary where Beth, the nurse, greeted me. "So, trouble again?" she asked. "I didn't fight, he just started striking me," I explained. "There'll be an investigation this time. He'll likely lose his job," she said while bandaging me. "One less corrupt guard," I muttered. "Guards are here to protect you, whether you believe it or not," she countered. "Well, they failed last time. He let it happen," I replied. She kept me overnight for observation. Meanwhile, the suspended guard's partner glared at me but said nothing. I could tell he'd gotten the message. Don't mess with Texas. Weeks passed, and Gina hadn't visited. Ken finally came with news. Lily was refusing to bring her. That enraged me even more. My ex-wife was now keeping my daughter from me, and I was determined to fight back harder. At the end of the month, Lily came to visit, dragging Gina along. Gina had refused to get out of the car until Lily relented. When Lily finally entered the room, she was already fuming. "Your daughter is impossible. She barely speaks to me and is just as stubborn as you," she snapped. "You said that last time," I replied evenly. "Why not ask the judge to give her to me? I'd gladly take her." "You're not getting her," Lily shot back. "She needs a good education to succeed." "Oak Forest is a good school, and she loved it there," I countered. "Wilmette's better. She's meeting people who can help her future," Lily insisted. "Our daughter will create her own future without riding anyone's coattails," I said firmly. Lily's tone turned sharper. "You're so stubborn you can't see the benefits," I sighed, tired of the same argument. "Lily, we've had this conversation too many times. You're not changing my mind, and I'm not changing yours, so why are you here?" "I know it's not to bring Gina to me." "Her name is Regina, not Gina," Lily corrected coldly. "That's not what she wants to be called," I replied. "Don't you want her to think for herself?" "You mean be stubborn," Lily retorted. "No," I said pointedly. "Independent. Strong enough to make her own decisions, not just follow someone with money or power." Lily smirked, recognizing the jab. Then, cutting to the point, she said, "I need spousal support. I have bills to pay." "You'll have to figure that out yourself. No paycheck for me means no payments," I said calmly. "What? I can't cover the bills with my income," she exclaimed. "Well, maybe you should have thought of that before dragging me to court," I replied. "You made things worse paying me in coins," she snapped. "And now you're getting nothing because I'm in jail," I said matter-of-factly. "You have to pay," she yelled. "No, I don't. What can they do? Jail me again? I'm already here." "What about the bills?" she whined. "Ask one of your lawyer friends to cover them. You deserve it," I said icily. That sent her storming out. A moment later, Gina walked in, and I felt a wave of relief. "You really pissed her off," Gina said with a grin. "She expects me to pay support from jail. Good luck with that," I replied. "How are you doing, Dad?" she asked. "I'm fine. How about you? Still not talking to your mom?" "Only when I have to," Gina admitted. "When are you getting out?" "I'm not apologizing to that judge unless he gives you back to me." "That's not happening, so I'll be here for 6 months." Gina nodded sadly. "Next month's my birthday. I'd love to celebrate with you, but don't go against your principles. We'll celebrate when you're out." Her words tore at me, but then she added something that caught me off guard. "If a man has no principles, he has nothing. As Lincoln said, important principles can and should be unbending." "Where did you hear that?" I asked. "My school counselor, Dr. Hodges. He's been great. Some teachers noticed my grades slipping and suggested I talk to him. It's helped with Mom, too, even if I still don't talk to her much." Wilmette's wealth showed in things like this. In a district like hers, even the school counselors had doctorates in psychology. "Well," I said, "your mom seems upset with you, too." "Yeah, she's getting on my nerves. I just ignore her." I think it makes things worse, but I don't care. In a couple of months, she'll have to start finding a new place to live, I said. The bank won't let the jumbo loan sit unpaid for long. Her mansion will probably be foreclosed on within 3 months. But Dad, if the house is foreclosed on, won't that hurt your reputation? Gina asked, her brow furrowing. Honey, when you pay for most things in cash, you don't worry about credit. That dumb mansion was the only thing I ever took a loan for. Really? Wow, Dad. Even with all your leases and businesses, you've never taken out a loan? I use money from one to buy the next, I explained. Gina smiled warmly. Daddy, I've always respected you, but now I respect you even more. Thank you, dear, I said, smiling back. You always know how to cheer me up. Spending time with my daughter was wonderful. I really wanted to see her more often. Missing her birthday would be tough for both of us, but I knew she'd be okay. She's a strong kid. The next week, I learned the security guard who touched me had been fired. It was hard to argue with video evidence showing I didn't even defend myself. A few days later, the other guard quit. I'm not sure if he was transferred or not, but at least he was gone. Several inmates thanked me for getting rid of the bad guard. I think I earned some respect. More people started calling me Tex, and I didn't have much trouble after that. The Sixes were still angry with me. I heard one of their wives filed for divorce, and 3 others were dumped by their girlfriends. Maybe even stupid people can learn. With the threat of more retaliation and my increased standing among the inmates, they realized it was better to leave me alone. A couple of weeks later, I got a subpoena to meet the judge via video. When the guard came to get me, I told him I wouldn't meet without my lawyer. But the judge is waiting, he said. I don't care. I want my lawyer. Reschedule it. My schedule's open. The guard hesitated, then walked off. 3 days later, they informed me the meeting was set for the following week. I requested 30 minutes with my lawyer beforehand, and they agreed. When we met, my lawyer said he hadn't been given any details about the meeting, which he found strange. I guess we'll figure it out as we go. When the judge appeared on the video, it was clear he wasn't happy about the delay. I didn't care. To me, he was just another egotistical idiot who thought he was better than everyone because he wore a robe. My lawyer spoke first. Your Honor, may I ask what this is about? We weren't given any information, just told to be here. The judge replied, Your client didn't need you. I just wanted to see if he was willing to apologize to the court for his outburst. My lawyer glanced at me, and I motioned for him to lean closer. I whispered my response. Your Honor, my lawyer said, he's not willing to apologize and believes you owe him an apology. He also requests primary custody of the child. The judge looked stunned. Why would I ask him to apologize? Of course he wouldn't do that. My custody decision stands, and I have no apology to make. Then we're wasting time, my lawyer replied. If my client changes his mind, we'll let the court know. Good day, sir. The judge stopped him. One more thing. I braced myself, thinking, here comes the real reason for this meeting. Your client isn't honoring the divorce decree, the judge said. When does he plan to make the spousal support and mortgage payments? My lawyer turned to me, and I whispered my reply. Your Honor, my lawyer said, he doesn't intend to make any payments while incarcerated. But the house will be foreclosed on, the judge said. I responded bluntly, it's not my house. Maybe my wife's mansion, but not mine. I never wanted it. The judge warned, it will destroy your credit and cost you all your equity. A small price to see my favorite ex-wife walking the streets where she belongs, I replied with a smirk. The judge's face hardened as I added, maybe her buddies can cover the payments. I'm sure they can pool their resources. I knew my words would enrage him, but I couldn't resist implying the judge and my wife had a personal connection. It worked. You worthless Southside scum, the judge spat. Who do you think you're talking to? Calmly, I interrupted. I think I'm talking to the man who enjoyed my wife's company. If I'm wrong, I apologize. I just don't see why anyone uninvolved would care so much. Standing, I headed for the door. As the guard prepared to escort me back to my cell, I heard the judge shout, Counselor, your client just earned 2 more months in jail. If he keeps disrespecting me, I'll make his life a living hell. I smiled, noticing the guard's shocked expression. He couldn't believe what I'd just done. Back in my cell, the realization hit me. My wife had been discussing the mortgage with her friends, and somehow that information had reached the judge. What a mess. But their time would come soon enough. The following Sunday, Lily couldn't resist visiting me in jail. Thankfully, Gina insisted on tagging along. I heard you pissed off the judge again and got 2 more months in jail. When are you going to learn you can't fight the system, Lily? She said. Why don't you just talk to me anymore? All you're doing is trying to act out against the North Side. I don't need that. All I care about is Gina visiting me regularly. She practically screamed, "It's Regina!" I turned away and stayed silent as Lily continued yelling. Eventually, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Moments later, Gina walked in, her face glowing with a big smile. "Why are you so happy?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because I'm going to see my daddy," she said brightly. "That can't be the only reason," I teased, leaning back in my chair. She grinned mischievously. "I have a surprise for you, but I can't tell you about it yet. I need to think it through first. Dad, do you trust me?" "With my life," I replied without hesitation. Her grin widened as she pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket and held it out to me. "Then, will you sign this without reading it first?" I looked at her cautiously. "What are you up to, Gina?" "You'll find out soon enough," she said, her tone playful. "I thought you trusted me." Smiling at her confidence, I signed the paper as she carefully folded it to reveal only the signature line. "There," I said, "but you owe me an explanation later." She tucked the paper away and shifted the conversation. "Mom said you did something to get 2 more months added to your sentence. Is it true?" "Yes," I admitted. "And I'm sorry, darling." "What did you do?" she pressed. I confronted the judge again. Gina smirked. "Well, whatever it was, he probably deserved it." We chatted for a while about school and her mom. She kept mentioning her school counselor, Dr. Alex Hodges, and speculating about what was going on. I tried steering the conversation back to her plans for the paper I'd signed, but she shook her head. "It's a surprise," she insisted. Before long, I shifted the subject again. "I'm sorry I won't be there for your 16th birthday," I said softly. "But the next time you visit, I'll have a present for you." Her eyes lit up. "What is it?" "It's a surprise," I said with a grin. "I guess we're both keeping secrets." As she stood to leave, I asked, "Can you do me a favor and ask Greg to visit me? I need to talk to him about something important." "Of course, Daddy," she said warmly before heading out. Greg had been my trusted point man for handling business matters before I went to jail. I'd left him with a few critical cases to manage, and now I had another task for him, a surprise birthday party for Gina. Later that week, Greg arrived for a visit. He gave me an update on everything I'd assigned him, and it was clear he'd been managing things well. Once we'd finished the usual business, I brought up my new request. "I want to throw Gina a surprise birthday party," I said. Greg looked at me skeptically. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Absolutely," I replied. "It's perfect for her." He nodded slowly. "All right, I'll make it happen." "All right, I'll talk to our lawyer," he said. "Also, I'll visit Ken and give him what you prepared. He'll know what to do. If he has questions, he can come to me. If not, I'll send him to Gummy." "Sounds good," I replied, grinning. Gummy knew how my mind worked and would handle things while I stayed guilt-free in jail. By the end of the month, my reputation among the inmates had soared. Word had spread fast, likely thanks to a guard sharing the story of how I stood up to the judge. In jail, news traveled as quickly as it did in any organization, and soon everyone was calling me Tex. Toward the end of the month, I had another visitor. Walking into the visitation room, I stopped short when I saw Lily. Annoyed, I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. "Kurt, please wait, I need to talk to you," she said, her tone unusually earnest. I sighed and replied coldly, "I have nothing to say to you, Lily." She ignored my protest and pressed on. "We're going to lose the house. You have to give me money to stop the foreclosure." I stared at her, unflinching. "This is your house, Lily. I never wanted it. You nagged me until I gave in, and now it's nothing but a financial sinkhole. It means nothing to me. There's no equity left in this market anyway. Let the bank take it." Her voice cracked. "Kurt, you can't do this. You have to help me." I folded my arms. "Ask your friends for help. I'm sure they have plenty of money. Then you can fully embrace the role you've chosen." Tears filled her eyes. "Why are you doing this to me?" she cried. I didn't hold back. "Why did you lie to the judge and accuse me of maltreating our daughter?" Her face went pale, and for a moment she was completely still. Then, as the weight of her actions hit her, tears streamed down her cheeks. Without another word, I turned and walked out, a sense of relief washing over me. As the guard escorted me back to my cell, he got a call on his radio. "Take him back to visitation," came the instruction. Expecting to find Lily still crying, I was surprised when I walked in and saw Gina instead. "Gina," I said, startled. "Your mom didn't mention bringing you." "She didn't bring me," Gina said with a shrug. "I wouldn't let her come here without me. I smiled, grateful to see her. "I'm sorry I missed your birthday," I said, "but I have a gift for you." "Dad," she said, her voice soft. "I knew you'd miss it, and I don't care. I love you anyway. You don't have to get me anything." I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. What an amazing daughter I have, I thought. "I don't have the gift here," I said, "and it's not immediate, but I can tell you what it is. Gina, the house in Oak Forest is yours. It'll go into a trust for you when you turn 18. Her eyes widened with excitement. "When I get out of here," she asked eagerly, "can I stay there?" "Of course," I replied with a grin. "I'll even pay the rent." Her face lit up and a huge smile spread across her face. "Daddy, oh my God," she exclaimed. "You just removed a huge obstacle for my surprise. I still can't tell you what it is, but you'll understand when I do. I love you so much." "I love you too, honey," I said, my heart full as I watched her smile. I couldn't stop wondering what Gina's surprise could be. It had to involve our home, not the mansion, but our real home. We both smiled as we kept talking. She brought up Alex, her counselor, again. Was it possible she had a crush on him? I hoped he was professional and had no improper intentions toward her. I'd have to meet this Alex guy as soon as I got out of here. As I was escorted back to my cell, a huge grin spread across my face, partly from the verbal showdown with Lily, and partly from my uplifting talk with Gina. The other inmates were puzzled, as smiles in prison often meant someone had been hurt. One day, Gummy came to visit me. Everything was set. We had video evidence of my wife, some paralegals from her firm, some of them married, and courtesans, all being entertained by various lawyers at her firm, rising Democratic politicians, and a certain judge I knew well. They bragged about being untouchable and doing whatever they pleased. People often underestimate janitors. They come and go unnoticed. Offering free rent for a year was enough to convince one of them to install hidden cameras in the offices and conference rooms. I knew we'd gather enough dirt to upend some lives. My brother, acting anonymously, would post the videos online with the slogan, "Don't mess with Texas." They'd send them to key websites and every major news outlet and tabloid in the state. The media frenzy would turn these people's lives upside down as politicians and lawyers scrambled to contain the fallout. I smiled and told Gummy, "In a week, let the others know what to do next." "I will," he said. Walking back to my cell, I was grinning ear to ear. Ringer saw me and knew I had spoken to Gummy. "Holy crap," he muttered. I just nodded, my grin widening. When the tapes were released, I lay on my bunk, listening to the murmurs spreading through the prison. Somehow the news had even reached this grim corner of the world. I heard inmates start to say, "Don't mess with Texas." Not long after, one of the Sixes, the gang I had tangled with, entered my cell. He was a huge guy and seemed uneasy. "You're a bad fool," he admitted. "I'm sorry for what I did to you." Calmly, I replied, "I warned you all not to mess with me. Now more people regret crossing me. I respond to kindness with kindness and violence with violence. I hope you'll accept my apology." "Sure," he said. "But remember, just because you're big doesn't mean you can't hurt yourself." He nodded and walked out. 3 days later, I was summoned before the judge again. My lawyer had already been contacted and was on his way. We sat in the video room waiting for the connection. "Wonder what this is about," my lawyer said with a sly smile. "Time will tell," I replied, matching his smirk. When the judge appeared on screen, his eyes burned with rage. "You did it!" he shouted. "Did what?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "You're Tex, aren't you?" he bellowed. "Some people call me that," I said evenly. "You're going to pay for this," he yelled. "I've been in jail for 4 months. How could I have done anything?" I replied, unfazed. "You have friends." "We all have friends, Your Honor," I said with a touch of sarcasm. "You're not getting away with this," he spat. "I don't know, Judge. You might be out of a job soon. I hear your wife's divorcing you." "Call off your dogs," he demanded. "Calling my friends dogs? They might not appreciate that. Corner a dog and you might get bitten." "Is that a threat?" he asked. "No, just a saying," I replied. "I'll make your life a living hell. When you leave this filthy prison, you'd better watch your back. One day, someone will make you pay, and I'll be thrilled to see it happen." He abruptly ended the call. I turned to my lawyer. "Did you get that?" "Every word," he said, holding up his phone. "Perfect. The Bar Association will love this. Last I checked, intimidation is a crime in Illinois." A few days later, my wife showed up for another visit. The moment I saw her, my mood soured. "Oh, it's you," I said flatly. "I thought I made it clear I have nothing more to say to you." "You fool!" she yelled, her voice trembling with fury. "What now?" I asked calmly. "You got me fired. My picture is all over the news and the internet." How could you do this to me? She whined. You did it to yourself, I said coldly. Do you hate me that much? She asked, her voice breaking. Yeah, and your arrogant law buddies who think they're above everyone else, I replied, my words cutting. When we first met, you were a sweet, small-town girl with a great personality. Now you're just a selfish, uptown witch. What am I going to do? She cried. I don't have a job, and no one will hire me. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. Move back to Seymour and stay with your folks, I suggested. I can't, she said. The local paper ran a headline, Local Girl at Center of Chicago Scandal. My parents are retiring early and moving to Florida to avoid the gossip. Well, Florida sounds like the perfect place for you, I replied coldly, farther away from me. They don't want me there. They barely even talk to me anymore. Wow, I said, my voice heavy with mock surprise. Your parents barely talk to you. Your daughter barely talks to you. Maybe the problem is you. She looked devastated but didn't reply. I continued, I think you should move and start over, but don't even think about taking Gina with you. As soon as I'm out of here, I'll petition for primary custody. With your reputation, I'm pretty sure the court will rethink who's the better influence for a teenage girl. You can't do that, she said desperately. She's all I have left. Lily, I don't care. You did this to yourself. We had a good life, but then you decided to have fun with everyone. I paused, smirking. Here's an idea. You could work as a strumpet for one of your lawyer buddies. I bet there's still a market for a nearly 40-year-old. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face, then broke down completely, resting her forehead on the table as she sobbed. Sucks to be you, I said without a shred of sympathy. Did you bring Gina? She practically exploded. It's Regina! And no, she's busy with that doctor friend of hers. Well, I said, standing up, then I've got nothing more to say to you. Don't bother coming back unless you bring Gina. I turned and walked away, leaving her sobbing at the table. For the first time, I didn't feel any satisfaction. Seeing her so broken left me strangely hollow. The next day, I saw the night report. A fire had gutted the top floor of a 5-story office building downtown. Thanks to the sprinkler system, the lower floors were spared, but the damage above was total. I just smiled. The following day, Ken told me that the law firm's external server had crashed, wiping out all their data. Again, I smiled. A couple of weeks later, Gina came to visit. She must have convinced her mom to bring her, but as soon as she walked into the room, I noticed the biggest smile I'd ever seen on her face. Gina, I said, my mood instantly lifting. You look so happy. What's going on? I finally finished my surprise for you, she exclaimed, her excitement bubbling over. You'll never guess what it is, I chuckled. Well, based on our last conversation, it's something to do with the Oak Forest house. Don't tell me you and your mom moved there. She'd live anywhere but there. You're half right, she teased, her grin growing wider. I frowned slightly, trying to piece it together. What do you mean? Mom's being evicted from the Wilmette house, she explained, and I'm moving into the Oak Forest house. I blinked, taken aback. How can you do that? The court gave her primary custody until you're of age. Gina's eyes sparkled with pride. I'm legally an adult now. I stared at her, completely stunned. Wait, what? She grinned triumphantly. I got emancipated. That's what Alex and I have been working on for the past 2 months. Once you put the house in trust, everything fell into place. I needed a stable place to live, and our old neighborhood is perfect for me. So, let me get this straight, I said, still processing. You're officially an adult now? Exactly, she said. When things got rough at school, mostly because of issues at home, Dr. Hodges helped me work through it. Now, once you're out of here, you can come home. I'm excited to go back to high school in Oak Forest. I've already reconnected with old friends, and they can't wait for summer to end so school can start. I heard you've been spending time with a counselor. I'd like to meet this Alex guy, I said, still suspicious of why he was so involved with her. You're in luck, Gina said. Alex brought me here today. My concern deepened. He was driving her around Chicago. I needed to tread carefully. I didn't want to upset Gina, but I also needed to make it clear to Alex that there were boundaries he shouldn't cross. When Gina returned, I was surprised. Instead of a man, a stunning woman with raven hair followed her in. She smiled warmly and asked, How are you doing? I studied her closely and said, Freddie? She smiled knowingly. I haven't heard that name in 20 years. Freddie, now Alexandria, was from my old neighborhood. She wasn't part of my gang, but we went to school together. Gina looked between us, clearly confused. Daddy, how do you know Dr. Hodges? Freddie, or Alex, answered, We grew up in the same neighborhood, but he barely noticed me. Turning to Gina, I explained. She was a couple of years behind me in school, and we didn't really hang out. And you were a juvenile delinquent, she added with a smirk. Looks like some things never change. You're in your 40s now, and you're still behind bars. My face flushed. I've never been good at keeping my mouth shut. Clearly, she teased. I hear people call you Tex now, don't they? Why do you call him that? Gina asked. That was his nickname as a teenager, Alex explained. He always got even when someone crossed him. Your mom did something terrible to him, and judging by the news about the law firm, I'm betting Tex had a hand in that. I plead guilty, I said with a sly smile. Before we went further, Alex addressed me. I hope you're okay with me spending time with Regina. It's Gina, she corrected. Right, Gina, Alex said. Then turning back to me, she continued. When I started working with Gina about 9 months ago, she was deeply upset about everything happening in her life. I wondered if she was related to you and Ken, since D'Angelo isn't a common last name. When I found out her dad's name was Kurt, I still wasn't sure, until she mentioned you were in prison. Then I knew it had to be you. I felt awful, but I figured you must have turned things around since you had a house in Wilmette. It's just a house. It was never home, I said flatly. Gina chimed in. Our real home is in Oak Forest. South Side, but a much better area than where we grew up, Alex added. Yeah, I said, feeling a twinge of regret. If we'd stayed there, maybe things would have turned out differently. We all paused, lost in thought, before continuing the conversation. I pulled Freddie aside and said, I really appreciate you taking time away from your family to help Gina. Thank you for guiding her through emancipation. It's made such a difference. It's no problem, Tex. She's like family to me. I've grown really attached to her. Thanks again. When I get out of here, we'll all go out to dinner, I said. I'll hold you to that if you ever get out, she replied with a smile. The next 2 weeks passed uneventfully, just the usual grind of prison life. Gina and Freddie continued visiting me every Sunday, and I felt a sense of relief knowing Freddie was looking out for Gina. During one visit, Gina told me Alex had been helping her decorate the house, buying new furniture and decorations. Curious, I asked, Where's the money coming from? From Uncle Ken, of course, she replied. I've got money set aside for what I need. Right, I said, nodding. I just wanted to make sure Freddie wasn't paying for anything. She's done so much for us already, but this is something I needed to handle. Don't worry, Dad, Gina reassured me. It's all taken care of. I just hope it's not all girly stuff in there, I teased. I'd like to feel at home too, she laughed. Don't worry, your man cave is still a man cave. She was referring to the basement, which I had renovated into my personal retreat. Living in a house with 2 women had sometimes made me crave a private space, and that basement had been my sanctuary. After they left, I lay in my cell reflecting on how much Gina had grown. She was an adult now, taking control of her life. Soon she'd be off to college, and who knows where life would take her. I thought about what my life would look like after her departure, how I'd manage being alone, and whether I'd meet someone who appreciated life's simple pleasures. The following Monday, I had another visitor, Lily. The moment I saw her, I turned to leave. Kurt, wait, she called after me. We need to talk. Reluctantly, I stopped and turned back. What now? I thought, bracing myself. Do you know what our daughter did? She asked, her tone accusatory. What are you talking about, Lily? I said warily. She got emancipation, Lily exclaimed. She doesn't have to live with us anymore. She's already moved out, and I don't know where she is. Oh, that, I said, shrugging nonchalantly. So you knew, she said, narrowing her eyes. Did you encourage her to do it? No, I replied. She did it herself, with help from her school counselor. Is she staying with the counselor? Lily pressed. No, she's back home on the south side. What about school? Lily demanded, her voice rising in frustration. She'll return to Oak Forest in the fall, I said calmly. She hated that school in Wilmette, Lily. They treated her like an outsider. A kid from the projects, as they called it. She never fit in with high society. You took her away from a school she loved, where she had good friends, and placed her in an environment that hurt her self-esteem and gave her an inferiority complex. You caused more damage than good. I just wanted her to get a good education, Lily said defensively. Children learn more from their parents' example than they do in school, I countered. We were her first teachers about life. What lesson do you think your example has taught her? Lily hesitated before saying quietly, I hope it shows her what not to do. Our job as parents is to raise responsible, law-abiding adults. I hope we've done that, and that she'll forgive our mistakes, especially our failed marriage." "It wasn't all bad," Lily said softly. "No, but it ended that way. Lily, I hope you find what you're looking for." Clearly, I wasn't it. She looked at me, sadness and regret etched on her face. I stood, walked away from the table, and left. For a moment, I felt sorry for her again. The day of my release finally arrived, and this time, I was summoned to an actual courtroom. Gina, Freddie, and Lily were present. As I waited, I noticed it was a different judge. I wondered if the previous one had lost his position. The new judge reviewed my case before addressing me. "Mr. D'Angelo, what do you have to say for yourself?" I replied. "I've served my original 6 months plus 2 more. "You could have apologized and walked free," he said. "I didn't believe the other judge deserved an apology, so I served my time," I stated. "You are a stubborn man," he remarked. "I prefer strong-willed. It served me well in business and life," I responded. The judge continued. "The divorce agreement remains in effect. You must compensate for the months you didn't pay." My attorney intervened. "Your Honor, my client is prepared to pay $20,000 today, which covers his obligations and closes all financial ties with his ex-wife." Lily immediately protested. "What? He owes me more and must keep paying until Regina turns 18. The judge silenced her. "Miss, I will handle this. Counselor, explain your calculations." My lawyer explained. My client covered the down payment for spousal support, mortgage, and insurance. He continued to pay for his daughter's insurance and needs throughout his incarceration, but could not pay spousal support or the mortgage due to lack of income. With the foreclosure on the house and the child's recent emancipation, spousal obligations ceased 3 months ago. The final amount owed is $19,782, which he will round up to $20,000. The judge reviewed the documentation and nodded. "If these figures are accurate, I'll accept the payment." The judge addressed us both. "You share a daughter, now legally an adult but still a teenager with needs. She deserves a stable, respectful environment. Can I count on you to remain civil?" He looked at me first. "Mr. D'Angelo?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. Then to Lily, "Mrs. D'Angelo?" "Yes, Your Honor," she said. Finally, to our daughter. "And you, Regina?" "It's Gina, Your Honor." "Yes," she corrected. The judge concluded, "If the evidence holds, this case will be closed. Mr. D'Angelo, you're free to go." "Thank you, Your Honor," my attorney said. As we headed out, Gina ran to hug me tightly. Freddie smiled warmly, but across the room, Lily approached, visibly bitter. $20,000? That's all I get?" she spat. "Why did you choose them over me? They can help you, but what about me?" Remembering the judge's plea for civility, I kept calm. "Let's stay respectful for Gina's sake." "It's Regina," Lily hissed. "Our daughter," I corrected. "Fine," she snapped. "But I have no job, no home. What now?" "You can get another job," I said. "For housing, I'll let you stay in one of my apartments, rent-free for 6 months to help you get back on your feet." "Move back to the South Side?" she sneered. "It's free rent," I said. "Take it or leave it." She huffed and walked away. I turned to Gina and Freddie. "Ready to go?" "Of course," they replied in unison. "Freddie, I owe you a nice dinner," I said. "How about RPM Italian? I booked it as soon as I got my release date." Lily's face twisted. RPM had been our place. Ignoring her, I added, "The reservation's for 6:30. Want to take a drive first? I need to feel free again." Turning to Freddie, I asked, "Could your husband join us?" Freddie's expression froze. Gina intervened. "Daddy, she doesn't have a husband anymore." "I'm sorry, Dr. Hodges. I didn't tell him." Confused, I glanced at Freddie's wedding ring. She explained softly, "My husband died in a car accident 5 years ago. I never took off the rings. It feels like letting go of him completely." "I'm so sorry." "I had no idea," I said. "It's okay," she replied, managing a small smile. "I'd like to join you tonight. Dinner was amazing. Real clothes, good food, and freedom." As we left, I turned to Freddie. "When you're ready, could I take you on a real date? No rush, just when it feels right." Freddie smiled. "I'd like that." Gina grinned. "Daddy, she's stuck with us." Freddie laughed. "Wouldn't have it any other way." Later, when we arrived home, I was overwhelmed. The house was refreshed and welcoming. I broke down, tears streaming as Freddie whispered, "Welcome home." She removed her wedding rings, and we embraced. In the end, Gina gained a new mother figure and later twin siblings named Frederick and Alexis in Freddie's honor. Lily remarried a wealthy attorney who gave her the status she craved, but not the happiness. As for me, I finally found peace.
I trudged home after a grueling day at the office, only to find that Alice wasn't around. Alice. I called as I climbed the stairs. I'm back. I'll be down in a sec, Spartan, she responded from above. It was a little joke we had. We'd met at a costume party where I'd been dressed as Spartan. We nearly bumped into each other, and I'd apologized, but she cut me off with, "You're Spartan," while poking me in the chest. I'd pointed at her chest and said, "I'm Alice," which made her laugh. It turned out her real name was actually Alice, and from that moment, we were Spartan and Alice. We'd been married for what I thought were 5 blissful years. I cracked open a beer, plopped on the couch, and tuned into the 6 o'clock news. The headlines had just ended when Alice finally descended the stairs. My jaw nearly hit the floor. She was wearing my favorite little black dress. It was mid-thigh length, and while the cleavage wasn't exactly red carpet material, it was far from modest. The backless design made it clear she wasn't wearing a bra, though the movement of her breasts gave that away too. To top it off, she was wearing the necklace I'd given her for our anniversary just a month ago. I fumbled for my phone to snap a picture, even though I wasn't quite sure why I'd need it. "Wow, didn't know we were dating," I said. "Let me freshen up and change clothes. By the way, where are we heading?" "We're not going anywhere," she replied. "David Sinclair invited me to dinner and dancing tonight. I'll probably be late, so don't wait up for me." David Sinclair, who was banned from all company parties after his reputation took a dive for messing around with too many married women. "He's not like that," Alice insisted. "He's just an uptight jerk with a jealous husband who caused all the drama." "Well, there's one jealous husband right here who's not about to let you date him," I said. "I don't belong to you," she shot back, heading for the door. "You may not belong to me, but when we exchanged our vows, we committed ourselves to each other. That means something to me. I thought it meant something to you too." "Oh, don't be so old-fashioned," she sneered. "We're in the 21st century now. Nobody believes in that stuff anymore. It's a shame you didn't tell me earlier. We could have just divorced and moved on." "Divorce?" I echoed. "What do you mean?" She laughed dismissively. As she walked out, I grabbed an old bat from the closet just as the Lexus pulled up. "Here comes David. Order yourself a pizza or something," she called out. She headed outside, and I yelled, "Alice." When she turned around, I ripped her dress off, leaving her standing in just a tight black thong and heels. She froze momentarily, then dashed back into the house. I walked towards the Lexus, tapping the bat on my palm as Sinclair sped off, tires screeching. I nodded at my neighbors, who were clearly enjoying Alice's impromptu show, and went back inside to return the bat to the closet. I grabbed a fresh beer, since the first one was already warm, and settled back on the couch, waiting for the inevitable drama. It didn't take long. Alice stormed downstairs, wrapped in a robe and seething with anger. Her tirade was a mix of fury and frustration that I could barely follow. I heard expletives that I didn't even know were in her vocabulary. I just sat there until she ran out of steam. "What were you thinking?" I asked, bewildered. "What were you hoping for?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Our lives have gotten so monotonous that we never have any fun anymore. Why am I only hearing about this now? And the last few times I tried to change things up, you were either too busy, uninterested, or it was just gross. Even if you can justify cheating, why humiliate me like this?" "I didn't want to lie," she explained. "I thought if I told you, it wouldn't count as cheating." "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard," I said. "Sleeping with someone else without my consent is definitely cheating. Maybe you'd allow it, she suggested, looking at me with false hope. You've really lost your mind, I said, feeling the rage bubble up. I need to get out of here before I do something we'll both regret. I snatched the keys and bolted before she could even get up from her seat. I did what any self-respecting man would do in my shoes. I went to my favorite bar to drown my sorrows. What's wrong, Michael? Ben asked, sliding another bottle my way. You look like you lost your best friend. Maybe you're not too far off, I replied. I came home to find Alice dressed to the nines, telling me she was going out with David Sinclair from work and that I shouldn't wait up. Of course you told her no, Ben said. Of course I did. What kind of fool do you think I am? I almost went off on him when he smirked and said, just messing with you, dude. So what happened next? Well, she gave me the usual spiel about not owning her and how loyalty is outdated. I guess you didn't buy it. Ding, 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 I said. You got it right. At that moment, Sinclair's car pulled up and Alice headed for the door. I grabbed a bat from the closet and, following her outside, tore off her dress right there in the street. She stood frozen for a moment, then realized all the neighbors were watching her in just a thong and scampered back into the house. I walked to the car, still holding the bat, and watched as Sinclair sped away. Looks like a win for you, Ben said. So, what's bringing you here tonight? The victory was short-lived. I was sipping my beer when Alice reappeared downstairs, pouting like a bear with a sore head. As she calmed down, she started ranting about our routine sex life and claimed that if she had my permission, it wouldn't be cheating. Ben was at a loss for words. I knew I needed to get out of there, so here I am. Ben cracked open a few more cold bottles, and we clinked glasses and drank. After a couple more drinks, I decided to call it a night before I risked driving under the influence. Good night and good luck, Michael, Ben said. Thanks, Ben. I think I'm going to need it. When I got back home, Alice was already in bed. I went through my usual evening routine, slipped into my pajamas, and crawled into bed with my back turned to her. As I drifted off, I thought I heard her quietly sobbing, but I chose to ignore it. The next morning, Alice was up early, making breakfast. Our meal was eerily quiet, and once we finished cleaning up, Alice started up again. Michael, why can't you see that times have changed? No one expects to stay with just one person for their entire life anymore. Well, I don't think I'm alone in this, I replied. As for staying with one person for life, neither of us was a virgin. We dated others before we met. You know that's not what I mean. We were just kids back then, barely understanding anything. Now we have more experience and more to compare. I don't need to compare anything, I said. I did a lot of comparing before I asked you to marry me. I chose you because I knew you were the one I wanted to spend my life with. When you said yes, I thought you felt the same way. Did you lie? No, but what? Have you changed your mind? If so, maybe we should just get a divorce. I don't want a divorce. Well, you can't have it both ways. If you don't want a divorce, you'll need to forget about this nonsense. Alice lowered her gaze and said, I don't want a divorce. Then it's decided, I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced. Despite Alice's claims that she had given up on seeing other men, I found it hard to believe. I was on edge every time she was late or didn't call when she said she would. The tension between us was palpable, and it even affected our intimacy. Everything felt more cautious and less passionate. Finally, I lost my composure. Alice, I want a divorce. She looked shocked. But I thought we were okay. Really? Do you think everything's fine? Do you believe we're anywhere near where we used to be, when things were good? She lowered her eyes and shook her head. Telling my parents was the hardest part. They couldn't grasp why we couldn't make it work. When my father-in-law cornered me one day, I showed him a photo of Alice half-dressed, and he backed off. We faced a lot of questions from the family. I let the wine flow to shield Alice from embarrassment, but ultimately, I had to show everyone the photo and explain what she had been up to. Alice's family came down hard on her, and she came to me looking for sympathy. Michael, is there really nothing I can do to change your mind about the divorce? I put my hand to my chin and thought for a moment. I came up with an idea that I was sure she wouldn't like. Okay, Alice, I won't stop the divorce, but I'll postpone it on one condition. Her mood lifted immediately. Anything, Michael? Be careful when you say anything. It's a lot. I'm not worried, she said. I'm sure you won't go crazy. So, what's the condition? She asked eagerly. I'll let you date other men as long as I can date other women. I was pretty sure I saw a grin flash across her face before she masked it with a sickly sweet smile. Of course, Michael, that's fair. What a piece of work. I was convinced she hadn't expected me to find another woman. There's one more thing, I said. What? You can't start dating until I've had a chance to find someone myself. She seemed thrilled, probably thinking she already had someone in mind and was worried I might not find anyone. I decided to give her a little incentive. If I can't find a date within 2 weeks, you can go ahead with your plans. This brought one of the brightest smiles I'd seen from her in weeks. She threw her arms around my neck and kissed me. That's great, Michael. Thank you. You'll see, this will be just what our marriage needs. Yes, it might just revive it, or flush it down the drain. A few days later, Alice was taken aback when I told her I had a date and suggested we go on a double date the next day. She probably thought I was bluffing and that she'd be out on a date while I stayed home alone. Without Alice knowing, I had lined up a date I hoped would put an end to this madness once and for all. On Monday, I took a long lunch to buy new clothes and left them in the car. On Friday, I left work early to get my hair done and make sure I was home before Alice. I snuck into the guest room with my new outfit and got ready in the shower. When I heard the garage door open, I finished shaving, brushing my teeth, and went to the bedroom to complete my look. Alice seemed surprised when I emerged from the guest room in a new outfit and with a fresh hairstyle, but she quickly regained her composure. David will pick me up at 6:30. Fine. We have a reservation with Olivia at 7 o'clock. The table is in my name in case you get there before us, I said as I walked out the door. What Alice didn't know was that we had a new hire at work, Isabel Ramirez. Isabel was a stunning redhead who turned heads everywhere she went. She was completely professional, never feeding office gossip. We'd struck up a casual friendship, and though she flirted with me from time to time, I would always politely show her my wedding ring. So, when I asked her out for drinks after work, she was intrigued. I arrived at the bar before she did and was staring into my glass when she walked in. So, Michael, what's got the last Boy Scout of America out of his shell? She asked with a laugh. One look at my forlorn expression quickly sobered her. Oh, Michael, I'm so sorry, she said, placing a warm hand on mine. I didn't mean to tease you. You look like you've lost your best friend. My eyes began to well up, and I turned away. Isabel put her arm around my shoulders and guided me to a table. I took a sip of my drink while she sat patiently, giving me the space I needed to gather my thoughts and muster the courage to tell her my story. Well, she said, once I'd finished, there's only one thing we can do. We? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, we, she confirmed. I'll be your date. I laughed for the first time since Alice dropped this bombshell of an idea. Why are you laughing? I'm serious, she insisted. I looked into her eyes, half expecting a gotcha moment, but her sincerity was clear. Why me? I know you don't date married men, hell, you barely even flirt with single men. If the guys at the office thought they had a chance with you, there'd be a line around the block. I'm not just looking for a date, she said. Like you said, I can date anyone I want. But I really like you. Maybe it's because you don't always undress me with your eyes. Not that you don't sometimes, it'd be weird if you didn't. But you always treat me with respect. When we talk, you actually listen and support my ideas when others dismiss them just because they come from me. More importantly, I like you, and I'm angry at your wife for treating you so poorly. So, are we on a date or not? I might not have been born yesterday, but I wasn't born last night either. You're in. I finished off the rest of my drink and walked Isabel to her car. She gave me her number, shared a friendly hug, and drove off. I had a feeling my life was about to get a lot more interesting. When I pulled up to Isabel's place, I barely had time to get out and open her door before she reached the car. She was a bit taller than Alice but still shorter than me. Her dress, emerald green and tight, fell just below the knee, with a daring slit up the left side almost to her thigh. Her wavy red hair cascaded down to her mid-waist, and the dress showed more cleavage than I'd ever seen on Alice. As I helped her into the car, she almost slipped, giving me a brief but tantalizing glimpse of her creamy white thigh before she adjusted her dress, flashing me a bright smile. "We'll have plenty of time for that later," she said, her voice a sultry purr. I had to compose myself before driving, feeling a bit awkward from her laugh and touch. As if that wasn't enough, she began rubbing my thigh. Luckily, we arrived at the restaurant before things got too far, and I managed to regain control as we walked in. Alice and David were already there. I'd seen David a few times before, and his appearance that evening made no more impression on me than usual. Alice, on the other hand, was furious. I don't think I've ever seen her so worked up. David didn't stand up, so I didn't offer my hand, merely nodding at Alice while helping Isabel into her seat. Alice was clearly shocked to see me with such an attractive date. I think she was going to make a snide comment but thought better of it. David, however, couldn't take his eyes off Isabel's cleavage. Alice had to elbow him to keep his gaze from wandering. Dinner started off awkwardly but soon felt like just another night out with two normal couples, rather than husband and wife with different partners. Afterward, we went to a club to drink and dance. The fast dances were uneventful, but during the slow songs, Isabel pressed herself against me, and I could feel Alice's glare piercing through me. Alice was practically grinding on David, trying to make a scene. She attracted quite a bit of attention, but she seemed oblivious to it, lost in her own world. When David's hand slipped under her dress to caress her breasts, I felt a wave of embarrassment and quickly led Isabel back to our table. We watched Alice and David put on their show until the manager approached them and asked them to leave. Alice dashed to the table in tears, grabbed her coat, and left with David following closely behind. "Well, you certainly know how to have a good time with a girl," Isabel said, giggling. I could only laugh and we returned to the dance floor. When we were ready to leave, I approached the manager. "I'd like to apologize for our companions," I said. "Don't worry about it," he replied. "No complaints here." "I understand. Please come again." I took Isabel to her apartment and walked her to the door. As I leaned in for a friendly goodnight kiss, she surprised me by pulling me close for a passionate kiss. Isabel asked, "Would you like to come in for a nightcap?" There was a certain glint in her eye that hinted she had more on her mind than just a drink, but who was I to argue? The glass was quickly forgotten as soon as the door closed behind us. She pushed me onto the sofa and straddled my lap, the slit in her dress widening to give me an enticing view. With deliberate slowness, she unbuttoned the top of her dress, letting it fall to her waist and revealing her firm, captivating breasts. Before I knew it, she slid to the floor and began unbuttoning my trousers. Her movements were agonizingly slow, and I found myself struggling to keep my composure. She settled back onto me, and I could feel her warmth pressing against me. In that moment, it struck me that, despite Alice's complaints about our sex life being stale, she had never allowed me such intimate positions. Alice always said it was humiliating. Clearly, Isabel didn't share that view. After a while, I rolled over beside her, and she nestled against me, resting her head on my shoulder. As we lay there, a nervous thought crossed my mind. Isabel, in all the excitement, I had forgotten to use a condom. It's okay, she reassured me, sensing my anxiety. I'm on the pill. I cupped her chin, lifted her face to mine, and kissed her tenderly, our tongues meeting in a gentle dance. I lost track of time as we made love, but it felt like mere moments before we drifted into a blissful sleep. Lying there, I couldn't help but think about Alice's claim that our sex life was monotonous. If anything, my night with Isabel had shown me it wasn't because of me. The next morning, we showered separately. While Isabel finished up, I made breakfast. When she saw the spread, she commented, "Wow, you're not just a great lover, you're also a cook. I could get used to having you around." As we sat down to eat, I said, "Isabel, I really like you, and last night was the best sex I've ever had. But I need to sort out my marriage first. Even if we do get divorced, I'm not sure how soon I'll be ready for another relationship." "Don't worry, Michael," she said, "I was just teasing you. I like you too, and if things work out, I could definitely see us together. But you're right, first, you need to settle things with your wife." After breakfast, we chatted about trivial things until I decided it was time to head home and see if anything could be salvaged from my marriage. When I walked in, I found Alice sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red from crying. Seeing my contented expression made her burst into tears. I took a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. "So, how was your night with David?" "Oh, Michael," she sobbed, "it was terrible. All I could think about was you and Isabel. She's so beautiful, and I know I can't compete with her." "You wouldn't have to worry about competition if you hadn't started this mess," I said. Alice couldn't meet my gaze but nodded in agreement. "I think you'd feel less regret if it was just me and David left alone at home." She looked up, her eyes filled with tears, then nodded again. "I just don't know what to do. Part of me wants to kick you out and start over with someone new." Alice was openly sobbing now, clearly tormented by the situation. "But then I look at you and see the person I married, the one I fell in love with. I don't see an evil woman, just a confused girl. I hope there's a way back for us." Alice's hope was evident in her tear-filled eyes. "I'm going to change and go out for a while. When I return, we'll talk again. Please don't make me move out, Michael. How can we be together if we're apart? I need you now more than ever." "You don't understand," I said. "It's not just about us getting back together. Maybe you should have considered how much you needed me before starting this." I went upstairs to our bedroom, leaving Alice at the table. When I came back down, Alice was still sitting there, watching me with hopeful eyes. I shook my head sadly and walked out of the house. I know it sounds cold, but I needed Alice to feel the fragility of our marriage. I walked down to the Charles River and sat on a bench, watching the rowers and sailboats. I felt a pang of sadness as I wondered if I'd ever have children with Alice. I don't know how long I sat there, but as the sun began to set and the chill set in, I took a deep breath and trudged back home. When I entered the house, Alice was still at the table. She looked up at me with hope, but I simply shook my head, went up to my room, and locked the door. I lay on the bed, fully dressed, covering my eyes with my hand. I don't know how long I lay there before I heard a soft knock and a whisper, "Michael." I didn't answer, and after a second knock, I heard her footsteps retreating to the guest room. After making sure she had gone to bed, I quickly showered and fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, I went downstairs to find Alice had prepared a large breakfast. Surprisingly, I had a good appetite, though Alice only picked at her food. "Michael," she said, "do you think we could try seeing a psychologist?" I considered the idea. I didn't know much about counseling and wondered if they'd try to get me to agree with Alice's perspective. If that was the case, I could always leave. But I wanted to work things out. From my night with Isabel, I'd learned that our sex life had become mundane. Did I really want to go back to that? Despite my anger at Alice for never addressing her issues with me directly, I decided I still had enough love for her. I wasn't ready to give up without a fight. Okay, Alice, let's get something straight, I said. She almost jumped out of her chair. I don't want a counselor whose goal is to save our marriage. Whether it can be saved or not is irrelevant. I won't tolerate any hidden agendas. I could tell she was disappointed. She must have been hoping for some New Age therapist who would endorse her times have changed philosophy, but she had no choice but to agree. The consultation turned out to be surprisingly effective. Alice had to face how her refusal to work with me was contributing to her dissatisfaction with our sex life, and I realized I needed to be more assertive. We discussed what we wanted, needed, and expected from our intimacy. Although counseling helped us address many issues, I remained focused on her betrayal, even if I didn't let it dominate our interactions. Alice, on her part, couldn't get past her insecurities about Isabel. Despite my assurances that, although I had some feelings for Isabel, I was not in love with her and that our date was merely a response to the situation, Alice simply didn't accept it. In the end, we decided to part ways amicably. Once the divorce was finalized, I took time to reflect on my life. I didn't immediately reach out to Isabel. Instead, I booked a stay at a bed and breakfast on the Mina coast. The weather was unpredictable, mirroring my mood, but I needed to relax and contemplate my next steps. When I returned, I called Isabel. We went to dinner, and though we ended up in bed together, it was more for comfort than passion. The next morning, as we lay in bed, she asked, "Penny for your thoughts, Michael?" I replied, "I was thinking how easy it would be to pick you up and ask you to stay with me forever. But I know that the easy way isn't always the best." She smiled slyly and said, "Get your mind out of the gutter. I don't just mean sex, you pervert. I really like you, and I know I could easily fall in love with you, but I'm concerned it might be unfair to both of us since my divorce is still fresh. I think it's better if we both see other people for a while, as well as each other. I can't guarantee how long this will last, and I won't ask you to wait for me." I wanted to argue, but I knew she was right. We got out of bed, used the bathroom, showered separately, and had a quiet breakfast. I was tempted to ignore our agreement and pursue a relationship with Isabel, and I think she might have been tempted too, but I was determined. After we finished cleaning up, she walked me to the door, and we hugged, tears in our eyes. "I think this is goodbye," she said. "No, I don't agree," I replied. "Why don't we meet for dinner in 2 weeks, just to check in on how things are going?" "Okay," she agreed, kissed me on the cheek, and led me out the door. The sound of the door closing felt like a prison door, and I wasn't sure if I'd made the worst mistake of my life. I spent the rest of the week questioning my sanity. On Friday, I decided to join some friends for dinner and drinks. We sat in a corner booth at the back of the restaurant, with me facing the door. As we were finishing dessert, I saw her walk in. Isabel was with a tall, handsome guy. Who was I kidding? Of course, he was tall and handsome. I was torn about whether to say hello, but I decided against it, respecting our breakup. I was disappointed at how quickly she seemed to have moved on. I guess you could call me a coward because I waited until she went to the restroom before leaving some cash on the table and saying a quick goodbye to my friends. I was angry with her for not waiting longer to start dating again and even angrier with myself. It was something we both agreed on. One thing was certain, I needed to get back into the dating scene. I flatter myself that I'm a pretty good catch, and I had no problem arranging a date for the following Friday. Her name was Heather Price. She worked as a secretary for one of my clients, and we'd had some flirtatious exchanges in the past. She knew I was married, but she readily agreed once I mentioned my divorce. Heather had always seemed attractive in a professional sense, but I was surprised by how stunning she looked when she opened the door. "I think I'm pretty well prepared," she said. "That's an understatement," I replied, noticing her readiness. "Just let me put on my cloak," she said. I helped her with it, and we went out. Dinner was filled with the usual first date conversation, though we discussed my divorce. Heather was shocked by Alice's actions. Over coffee and dessert, I decided to be upfront. "Heather, I don't want to deceive you. Before my divorce was finalized, I was involved with someone, and after my divorce, things got serious. We both agreed to see other people for a while to avoid rushing into anything. I don't want you to think I'm just using you as a placeholder. I'm open to whatever happens." Her response was reassuring. "Michael, this is just our first date. I'm not expecting any commitment. I appreciate your honesty. Let's just see where things go." With that awkwardness behind us, we had a pleasant evening, ending with a warm kiss and plans for the following Saturday. Meanwhile, I had a dinner planned with Isabel and was unsure of how it would go. When she arrived, she was as beautiful as ever. During dinner, she suddenly became serious after our orders were placed. "You know, I saw you," she said. I raised my eyebrows, curious. "I saw you with your friends the other night. I was going to come over and say hello, but when I came out of the restroom, you were already gone." I felt a little embarrassed. "I know we agreed to see other people, but seeing you with someone else so soon made me a bit jealous." "It's silly, I know." "Michael, you had no reason to be jealous," she continued. "Ethan is an old friend I hadn't seen in a while. When he called, I took the opportunity to have dinner with him. It wasn't anything significant. No need to apologize. If there was any upset, it was all in my head. In fact, it motivated me to finally get off my butt and ask someone out. We had dinner last week." Her eyebrows raised at that. "Should I be feeling jealous?" she asked, a playful smile on her face. "Oh, I wouldn't worry about that," I replied. "We've got another date planned for tomorrow night. We both agree there's no commitment here, just two people enjoying each other's company." "That's nice," she said, her smile tinged with wistfulness. "You deserve to have a good time." Our awkward conversation was cut short as our dinners arrived, shifting our chat to lighter subjects. "Would you like to go dancing?" I asked, opening the car door for her. "No, I think it would be better if you just took me home," she replied. The drive was quiet. She stared out the window, lost in thought. We reached her door, shared a kiss that was perhaps a bit more intense than we intended, and gently separated. "Please stay in touch, Michael," she said. "I will," I assured her. "Good night, Isabel," I said, quickly retreating to my car before attempting to get her inside. My date with Heather went well. Our goodbye kiss was more passionate, and we even did a bit of petting, but we decided to break things off before it went too far. Even though I spoke with Isabel every week or so, we never actually met up. I'm not sure if we were avoiding each other subconsciously or if it was just fate. I saw Heather a few more times. We ended up in bed and had fun, but there was no real spark. After our third night together, Heather dropped a bombshell. "Michael, I think this should be the last time," she said. "What?" "I thought everything was fine." "Well, it might have been too fine," she replied, sounding perplexed. "Michael, when we started, we agreed there'd be no commitment. I made it clear I wasn't looking for anything serious, and I didn't have any feelings then, but now I'm starting to develop feelings for you. If we keep going, I think we might head down a path I'm not ready for. I'd rather end this now before the feelings deepen and cause more pain later. I hope that makes sense." In a way, it did. It hurt, but I knew I'd get through it. I dressed, kissed her forehead, and made my way to the door. "Good night, Heather." "Goodbye, Michael," she said, her sad smile and teary eyes telling their own story. After closing the door, I pondered my next move. I started dating a string of women. Some were one-night stands, others were short-lived relationships, but none of them were serious. Eventually, I figured out what was missing and decided to make a call. "Hello?" she answered. "Isabel, it's Michael," I said, forgetting she had caller ID. "Isabel, I don't know where you are right now, but I'm done with casual rebounds. I'm ready to settle down if you'll have me. I want to come home." There was a pause on the other end, and I began to worry I'd missed my chance. "How soon can you come?" Alice had stayed in town, living a solitary life with her cats, and she certainly wasn't looking for work in a Mexican brothel. I wasn't truly serious about her, but I saw Heather a few more times. We ended up in bed again, and while it was fun, the spark just wasn't there. After our third night together, Heather dropped the same bombshell on me again. "Michael, I think this should be the last time." "What?" "I thought we were fine," I protested. "Maybe too fine," she said, her words confusing me. "Michael, we agreed on no commitment. I didn't have any feelings at the start, but now I'm developing them. If we keep this up, we might end up in a place I'm not ready for. I'd rather end things now before the feelings get too deep and hurt more later." I hope this makes sense. It did, in a strange way. It hurt, but I would move on. I got dressed, kissed her forehead, and headed to the door. "Good night, Heather." "Goodbye, Michael," she replied, her sad smile and teary eyes reflecting her own pain. I closed the door and thought about my next move. Some of my dating experiences were one-night stands, others were brief relationships, but none of them turned serious. Eventually, I realized what was truly missing in my life and decided to pick up the phone. "Hello?" she answered. "Isabel, it's Michael," I said, completely forgetting she had caller ID. "Isabel, I don't know what's going on with you, but I'm done with endless rebounds. I've had more ups and downs than a pinball machine, and I'm ready for something more. If you're still open to it, I want to come home." There was a pause on the other end, and I feared I might have missed my chance. "How soon can you come?" she finally asked. Alice hadn't left town in disgrace. She lived a solitary life surrounded by her cats and certainly wasn't seeking work in a Mexican brothel. Though I wasn't particularly curious, mutual friends mentioned she was dating, but no one serious seemed to be in the picture. Isabel wanted to invite Alice to our wedding. Although I had reservations, I didn't object. Alice declined the invitation but sent a lovely gift instead. I was surprised when Isabel developed a casual friendship with Alice, meeting occasionally for coffee or shopping. It didn't bother me, although it was certainly unusual. About 6 months after we got married, I came home to find Isabel dressed up and ready to go out. "Oh, here we go again," I thought. But fortunately, my concerns were misplaced. "Go change," she said. "We're meeting Alice at Olivia's for dinner." "Look, I know you two have become pretty close, but don't you think this is a bit much?" I asked. "Don't worry, dear. There's a method to my madness," she replied. I knew better than to argue when she had her mind set on something, so I shrugged and went to change. When we arrived, Alice was already there, and the situation was as awkward as could be. Isabel and Alice exchanged cheek kisses, as women do, while I just stood there, feeling out of place. Neither of us seemed to know what to do. Alice broke the silence. "Michael, good to see you. You look great." "Thanks, Alice. You look good too." We were spared further awkwardness as we were shown to our table. Isabel paused to speak with the man at the counter. "What's this all about?" I asked when she rejoined us. "Don't worry about it, honey," she said. "Every husband knows that when his wife says nothing, it usually means something, and he should be concerned." But there was nothing I could do except go along with it and hope for the best. Alice sat to my right, with Isabel opposite her. Before we could even order drinks, the owner came over with Ethan. Isabel greeted him warmly, gave him a hug, and seated him on my left, directly across from Alice. It became clear that Isabel's plan was unfolding. While my worst fears hadn't come true, the evening still had the potential for disaster. Fortunately, Alice and Ethan hit it off, and the conversation flowed smoothly throughout dinner. By all accounts, we were like four old friends. Before long, it was time to leave. Ethan and I split the bill, and as Isabel and I were heading out, Alice and Ethan decided to extend their evening at the restaurant bar. Isabel was so self-assured, but I couldn't be angry. Although it might not last, they clearly had a good start. We kept up cordial, if somewhat distant, relationships with Alice and Ethan. We rarely saw each other as couples but often met in group settings. Apparently, their relationship was stable, and Alice no longer seemed to need to spice things up. We wished them all the best. Isabel and I couldn't be happier. Though, I must admit, the baby's kicks at night certainly keep her awake.
From a young age, I was captivated by the idea of flying. While other kids played with toy cars or dreamed of being athletes, I imagined soaring through the clouds free from the ground. Growing up, my family wasn't wealthy, so I worked hard to pursue my dream of becoming a pilot. Despite the challenges, that dream fueled every decision I made. As I got older, I took on any job I could find to save for flight school, whether it was late shifts at the diner or mowing lawns. When I finally earned my pilot's license, all that hard work paid off. Soon after, I began flying for the Air National Guard. However, after my time with the Guard ended, I faced a hiring freeze with the major airlines, leaving me working for a smaller regional airline. Through it all, Amita, my wife, was my constant. Amy came from an even poorer background than I did, but we stuck together from third grade on. I told her in junior high that I'd be a pilot, and she said, "Take me with you." I promised, and we got married as soon as we could. Amy was nearly 6 feet tall, slender, with freckles, big ears, and a large nose. To me, she was the most beautiful bride. She followed me everywhere during my career, making our home cozy no matter where we were. She was great at saving money, haggling for everything we needed, though she had a weakness for postcards, which she collected from every place we went. We bought a fixer-upper house with our savings and my modest salary of just over $25,000 as a regional airline pilot. I didn't mind. I had Amy and the chance to fly every day. She found work with a real estate developer, and we worked together to make ends meet. Life was good, despite the slow airline hiring market. We made the best of every moment, enjoying each other and the life we built. Every morning, Jose, our head mechanic, gave me a ride to work. He helped me a lot with my truck, and we had rebuilt almost every part of it together. Jose had escaped Cuba with his girlfriend, now wife Maria, at 18, and he was proud of his big family, especially his kids. One morning, I rode with Jose and his youngest son, Angelo, a high school freshman. I greeted them, buckled in, and mentioned needing to stop by Amy's workplace to drop off her cell phone, which she had forgotten. Angelo, like most teens, was listening to music on his headphones, but noticed the phone in my hand. Curious, he asked to see it. I tossed him the phone, and soon after, he commented, "Someone's gonna get lucky today," showing me a message on Amy's screen. The message read, "Protein lunch day 2. Confused, I asked what it meant, and Angelo showed me more texts between Amy and a man named Troy, her boss. They were clearly having an affair. The shock hit me hard. I felt sick and asked Jose to take me home immediately. Angelo forwarded the messages to me, and I confirmed the sender was Troy Kingston, Amy's boss at King One Developers. It felt like a terrible cliche, my wife having an affair with her boss. Jose, noticing my distress, offered to take me to the doctor, but I declined. I just needed to get home. Angelo continued reading the messages aloud, each one making me feel worse. When we finally arrived home, I barely made it to the bathroom before throwing up. As I sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, I remembered how Amy and I had remodeled that bathroom together. Those memories only deepened the hurt I was feeling. Maybe Amy's cheating, I thought, feeling uneasy. Troy Kingston, her boss, was in his 50s, nearly 20 years older than us. He fit the typical real estate developer stereotype, tall, trim, tanned, with dyed hair and plugs to hide his bald spots. He had a big voice and loved cracking jokes, both clean and crude. Trying to calm myself, I hoped it was just one of his jokes. I decided to stop by Amy's office, using the excuse of taking her to lunch, and figure out what was going on. It was almost 11:30 a.m., and I hurried to her office. At King One Developers, I told the receptionist I needed to return Amy's phone. After making a few calls, she said Amy wasn't available. I explained I already had her number since I was holding her phone. The receptionist then mentioned she saw Amy leave with Mr. Kingston and that they often had lunch at his house or the club. Ignoring the knot in my stomach, I said I'd find her later. I drove to Troy's house, which I'd been to once for a Christmas party. It was a big, flashy mansion with an Olympic pool and a red Hummer H2 parked outside, indicating they were inside. The front door was unlocked, so I walked in and heard noise from the upstairs bedroom. With my heart racing, I dialed Amy's phone. From behind the door, I heard it ringing, muffled inside the bedroom. I stepped back, bracing for what might come next. "Troy Kingston," a voice answered. "Hey, Troy," I said through Amy's phone. "She left her phone at home. The office said she's with you. Can you tell me where you are so I can bring it to her? Better yet, let me talk to Amy." "Kevin, we're heading back to the office from the club," Troy replied. "We just finished a lunch meeting with a client and stopped by my house to grab some paperwork. Amy's in the restroom." Standing just outside the bedroom, I listened as Troy lied. I cracked the door open and saw him shout toward the bathroom, "Amy, your husband's calling." Amy, wrapped in a towel, casually sat on the bed. The way they acted around each other made it clear this wasn't new. "Hey, Kevin," Amy said, taking the phone from Troy. She flirted with him as she spoke to me, pretending nothing was wrong. "Thanks for finding my phone. I've been looking everywhere for it." I pushed the door open and stepped into the room. They froze. "Well, Amy," I said, pointing at her, "I don't think you'll find your phone between Troy's legs." Troy bolted into the bathroom, slamming the door. Amy stayed on the bed. "Get dressed," I said. "We need to talk." "No," Amy replied calmly. "I'm not going anywhere with you. I like living this way." I was shocked. "You enjoy being a cheating liar?" "I'm sorry you found out this way, Kevin," she said, unfazed. "But I want a better life than what you can give me. Troy can provide that now, not in a few years like you might." "This is what you're trading our marriage for?" I asked, gesturing around the room. "I'm not throwing anything away," Amy said, still calm. "I followed you for 15 years, living like a pauper, but I deserve better now. I'm tired of clipping coupons and shopping for sales. I want more, and Troy can give it to me. I ask you to respect my decision." I was speechless. "Respect what, Amy? You cheating and Troy hiding in the bathroom?" She just shrugged. The room felt suffocating. I tossed the phone back to her and walked out, flipping her off as I left. "You two deserve each other. I have flights tomorrow. Get out of my house." For the rest of the month, I was in a daze. They say grief has 7 stages, but I was stuck in shock and denial for 2 weeks. How could Amy do this? Had I missed the signs? As a professional, I was trained to notice small details before they became big issues, yet I completely lost awareness in my own life. Every morning, I woke up expecting to see Amy, and then the painful memories would hit, starting the cycle all over again. By the 3rd week, the emotional pain set in, worse than any physical injury. Amy had shattered my heart, and the grief was unbearable. Jose and his wife Maria were my lifeline. They were the only ones I confided in, and they were just as stunned. Leaving a spouse was incomprehensible to them. Jose had taken a bullet during their escape from Cuba, and Maria had nursed him on a raft until they were rescued. They both worked tirelessly to build a life in America while raising 6 children. Their love and loyalty were unwavering. At the end of the month, anger hit when the bank called. I was overdrawn. Amy had emptied all our accounts. I couldn't get a new line of credit, and the bank refused to help, as Troy Kingston was a big client. To top it off, a man served me divorce papers by my truck. Realizing I was in serious trouble, I researched the situation. Amy was claiming the repairs on my old truck were equal to her new Camry, and she had cashed out all our assets. She offered me the house with an inflated appraisal, leaving me 10 days to avoid foreclosure. Jose's son, a law student, reviewed the papers with his professor. He warned me I was at a disadvantage. Amy had powerful lawyers thanks to her new relationship. I would lose the legal battle. Needing money fast, I sold my truck for $7,000, which helped me stave off foreclosure and cover some bills. For the next year, when I wasn't flying, I worked with Maria's cleaning crews and biked everywhere to save money. I lived extremely frugally, surviving mostly on the home-cooked meals Jose and Maria insisted I eat. Maria tried setting me up with Latina women, But I couldn't even afford a soda, let alone a date. By the start of my second year, my divorce was behind me, and I was starting to get ahead. I even took some time off to work on the house. One day I found boxes of Amy's old postcards. My first thought was to burn them for warmth. Instead, I rode my bike to the library and emailed Amy about the postcards. She replied within an hour. "The postcards are where I've been, not where I'm going. Do what you want with them." I printed both emails for my records and went home. That night, I built a big fire and roasted marshmallows while watching those cards burn. For the first time, I slept peacefully and woke up without thinking about Amy. Over 2 years had passed since I last saw Amy. One Friday night, while taxiing onto the runway, a flight attendant told me about an unruly passenger who wouldn't turn off his phone. I offered to handle it, expecting the usual resolution: a stern word and compliance. To my surprise, the passenger was Troy Kingston, drunk and shouting on his phone. Even more shocking was his companion, my ex-wife Amy, barely recognizable. She was covered in jewelry, with bleached blonde hair, a nose job, plumped lips, and plastic surgery everywhere. I realized where all the money had gone. "Good thing Amy didn't waste it," I muttered. Switching to professional mode, I approached Troy. "Mr. Kingston, you need to turn off your phone for the safety of the flight." Troy snapped. "Back off, flyboy. I'm closing a deal worth more than you and this airline." I turned to Amy, asking her to reason with him. She stared out the window, ignoring me. Sighing, I returned to the cockpit and announced over the intercom, "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be returning to the terminal briefly. Thank you for your patience." My first officer had already taken us back to the gate where airport security was waiting. Troy Kingston's day took a turn when 3 loud airport police officers, followed by a Homeland Security agent, boarded the plane. Troy was let off in handcuffs, facing charges for interfering with the crew and endangering the aircraft. Federal offenses since we were on the runway. The DHS officer told me Troy would spend the weekend in a holding cell, as federal courts don't operate on weekends, and he'd also be placed on the no-fly list for 90 days. To add insult to injury, Troy was billed for the fuel, landing time, and ground crew expenses. Well, couldn't happen to a nicer guy, I thought as we taxied back out. Later, I was sitting at Jose and Maria's kitchen table, celebrating their daughter starting medical school. Jose, proud of her, beamed. "She's going to be a rocket surgeon." I smiled, declining more drinks. Seeing their happiness reminded me of what I had lost with Amy. "Not like that, worthless Amy," Maria said bluntly. "Captain, let me find you a nice Latina. I'll treat you good." I smirked. Maria, with her thick accent, was always trying to set me up. "I'm a bit hesitant after last time," I joked. Maria mumbled something to Jose in Spanish. "Captain, you're better off without her." No argument, I shrugged. Scooting closer, Maria added, "Amy didn't know what she had. Her life isn't so happy now." Curious, I asked, "Come on, Maria, what do you know?" Maria, with her network of cleaners and housekeepers, had the best gossip around, rivaling any intelligence agency. Maria leaned in and whispered, "My girls say Amy's not doing well. The other wives call her lemon pie because they're afraid she'll steal their husbands. Amy throws parties, but no wives show up. Just some husbands who look at her like she's a piece of meat, which makes her and Mr. Kingston mad. So, no more parties." I tried not to laugh. Maria continued, "Amy's upset because Kingston won't marry her. He doesn't give her much money and he doesn't trust her. He checks her phone and hired a private detective to watch her. When Amy found out, she was furious." I poured a drink. "Well, Maria, what did you expect? There's no trust between thieves. They can enjoy living in constant suspicion." Maria wasn't finished. "I send older ladies to clean for Mr. Kingston. He's always trying to touch the younger ones, but Amy blames the girls and complains that they treat him badly. I know it's not true." "If Amy can't keep him happy, why blame the staff?" I said sarcastically. "No one wants to work there anyway. He never tips." Maria laughed, and Jose jumped in to change the subject. "Captain, we're going golfing tomorrow. I won a round at 9 Rivers in a raffle." "Golf? You play, Jose?" I asked, surprised. Jose nodded. "When we came to America, Maria noticed successful people play golf, so she bought me clubs on sale and made me take lessons, even the kids. But she never lets me rent a golf cart." Maria gave him a stern look. "We're saving for the kids' college. God gave you legs. Use them." Jose raised his hands in mock surrender, but smiled, taking Maria's hand. I finished my drink, wished them good night, and headed home. The next day, Jose brought his son's golf clubs for me to use, as I had sold mine after the divorce for extra cash. It was the first time in a while that I wasn't flying, working, or doing house chores, and I was having a great time. However, my mood soured when I saw a large photo of Troy Kingston and Amy hanging in the clubhouse. Troy, a board member of Nine Rivers Country Club, was pictured with Amy at an event. Sensing my frustration, Jose noticed the photo too. "Captain," Jose said, "keep an eye on the entrance and let me know if anyone's coming." Confused, I stood guard for a few minutes. Finally, Jose said, "All clear, let's go." When I turned around, I saw he had drawn a handlebar mustache, devil horns, and crooked teeth on Troy's picture. And he didn't spare Amy either, giving her a big nose and huge ears. "What are you, 12? I laughed, but my mood had lifted. "Let's go play golf," Jose grinned. We were having a blast. At the 7th hole, we noticed an elderly man ahead taking a shot. Suddenly, he collapsed, clutching his chest. Jose and I dropped our bags and ran to help while his wife frantically tried to call for help. The man wasn't breathing. "Jose, start CPR," I ordered, beginning chest compressions. "Call emergency," I shouted to the woman. "I don't have a signal," she screamed, panicking. Neither Jose nor I had cell coverage either. "You have to run to the clubhouse," I yelled at her. She hesitated but finally ran off. Jose and I continued CPR, but after 10 exhausting minutes, we were struggling. Just as I was about to give mouth to mouth, an electric golf cart zoomed up, nearly running over my foot. The girl driving the beverage cart jumped out, grabbed a small hard case, and knelt beside me. Inside was a portable defibrillator, like the ones in airports. "Stand back," she said, ripping open the man's shirt and attaching the sensors. "Jose, get help," she ordered. Jose sped off in the cart while she followed the defibrillator's instructions and pressed the shock button. The man's chest jolted, and his eyes fluttered open. "He's breathing, but he needs medical help fast," she said. I wiped my forehead and glanced at her. A young, slender woman with a name tag that read, Lords. Just then, a Ford F-250 truck pulled up, driven by Jose. "Recognize your old truck, Captain?" he joked. "The golf cart died." We loaded the man into the truck, Lords riding up front, and I took the driver's seat. As we tore across the golf course, Lords directed me to a path, but I insisted on my own route, familiar from countless flights overhead. Lords was on the phone with the hospital, rattling off medical jargon. I quipped, "Not bad for a drink cart, girl." She shot back, "I'm a nurse, dumbass." I could only manage, "Oh," as we screeched into the emergency entrance, where doctors were waiting. For a week, Jose and I were airport heroes. But soon after, I got a letter from the Nine Rivers Country Club, billing me $247.88 for course damages. They threatened legal action if I didn't pay, but I just laughed and tossed it in the trash. It's hard to get something from nothing, I thought. I never learned if the man recovered, but he was airlifted out soon after stabilizing. I tried calling Lords, only to find she no longer worked at the club. After a week of searching, I asked Maria for help, and within 15 minutes, she had all of Lords' info, from her phone number to her shoe size, thanks to her network of Latina women. Maria started talking about Lords as if she were giving a formal report. Lords is 26 years old, the only daughter of her father, an immigrant laborer she cared for until he passed away. Her mother died when Lords was a child. She's never been married, recently got her nursing degree, but hasn't taken the exam yet, and works the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift at Mercy Nursing Home. She rents a room, isn't seeing anyone, and loves vanilla ice cream with sprinkles. That's it, Maria teased with a grin. No birthmarks, no warrants. She gave me a smug look. Lords is a good girl. She goes to Mass every Sunday at St. Paul's. Want me to set you two up? She reached into her pocket for her phone. No, Maria, I jumped up. Thanks for the phone and Lord's address. I'll take it from here. I heard Maria laughing as I left her house. The next day, Lords was sitting on her front steps when I approached with flowers. She smiled when she saw the surprise on my face. "Why'd you wait so long, Kevin?" How did you know I was coming?" I stammered. "The Latina Women's Network works both ways, Kevin." Lords laughed as she stood, took the flowers, and headed up the stairs. "You haven't had a chance. Stay here while I put these in water." Lords was easy to talk to. She shared how she balanced school, nursing homework, and a job delivering drinks at the Nine Rivers Country Club until recently. "Kevin," Lords began, "I had a lot of debt from loans and tuition. My nursing home job covers rent and living expenses. The good money from serving drinks helped me pay off the debt, save for the nursing exam prep, and cover the testing fees." "What happened to the Nine Rivers job?" I asked. Lords wrinkled her nose. After that little monster truck ride, the board fired me. They said I left early. I know it was that board member, Troy Kingston. He's been trying to sleep with me since I started there. Now he entertains his secretary every Wednesday during lunch. Lourdes shuddered. I wasn't shocked Lourdes knew about my situation and marriage. The Latina Women's Network circulated a lot of gossip. Some of it was exaggerated, and much of it was wrong, as I'd found out. You know, Kevin, Lourdes said, most of the gossip says your wife left because she switched teams. Some think it's because you were gay. Suppressing a laugh, I asked, where did that come from? Lourdes looked slightly embarrassed. Some girls on the cleaning crew were more than interested in helping you through your grief. The skirts got shorter and the blouses lower. You never reacted, so they figured you must be gay. I laughed. You must mean Anita and Orlando. There's no way I missed their attempts to cheer me up. I slapped my knee. Lourdes, tell them I appreciate it, but I have a strict rule. How to put this? I don't eat where I trailed off, grinning. Lourdes chuckled. Good, I'm glad you noticed. Did your ex-wife not have that rule about work? To be blunt, I replied, Amy can eat crap. I wanted to see more of Lourdes. Kevin, I'm not a prude, but I'm not much to look at, Lourdes said. Can we meet tomorrow? I'm working on the house tomorrow, having trouble with the door hinge, I said. Maybe you made the mortise holes too shallow. How did you adjust the reveal? She asked. Morty, what? I was confused. Lourdes rolled her eyes. Oh, Kevin, just give me your address. I'll be there tomorrow morning. Lourdes grew up around her dad, a laborer and handyman. What she knew about home repair rivaled the crew from this old house. If she didn't know something, she'd bring a retired craftsman from the nursing home to teach us. We spent every spare moment together, growing closer each time. But it wasn't the closeness I had expected. The night went great, and the morning even better. I'd been thinking about something for a while. Lourdes, will you move in with me? I asked. Lourdes raised an eyebrow. Kevin, I'm not the type of girl who moves in after one good night. Lourdes, I want you in my bed every night, I said, admiring her. But it's also practical. It'd be cheaper to live together than apart. You'll save on rent and reach your goals faster, passing the nursing exam and all that. I'm not a freeloader, Kevin. I'm not trading myself for a place to stay, she said, crossing her arms. I always pay my way. You'll still pay, I teased, grabbing her towel. You can keep fixing up the house for rent. Honestly, I should be paying you for everything you've done. I get more out of this deal. Lourdes threw the towel back and sat on the bed, thinking. I held my breath, waiting. Finally, she turned and said, Kevin, do you think your friend Jose will lend us his truck to move my stuff on Friday? We'd been together over 6 months now. The house had never been in better shape, and I was happy. I still worked, cleaning houses and logging as many flight hours as the FAA allowed, but Lourdes had changed my life. I wanted to propose, but knew she wanted to get her nursing license and establish her career before settling down. The housing market crash hit our town hard, and no company felt it more than King One Developers, where Troy Kingston worked. Within a week, the company collapsed like a house of cards. The bank pulled several loans, and Troy's entire operation fell apart. Federal regulators started investigating, and it turned out Troy had mixed funds, mortgaged properties he didn't even own, and was over-leveraged in real estate. He didn't even have enough money to file for bankruptcy. Troy, facing overwhelming challenges, made a tragic decision one night. He drove into his garage and never came out. I felt sorry for the financial mess he left behind for others, but not for him. Oddly, I didn't even think about how this would affect my ex-wife Amy. She was in my past, and I was focused on my future with Lourdes. A few weeks later, as I walked home from the bus stop, I saw a figure sitting on my porch steps. It was dusk, but even in the dim light, I could tell who it was. Hi, Amy, I said, standing over her. Hi, Kevin, she replied, looking up at me but not moving from the steps. Amy, I'd love to say it's good to see you, but that would be a lie. I've had a long day and just want to get inside. Amy didn't budge. Why are you walking, Kevin? Where's your truck? You're sitting on it, I said dryly. Amy looked around, confused. Oh, you sold it for the house. I get it, but why, Kevin? You loved that truck. I loved a lot of things back then, Amy, I said coldly. You learn to live without things when you have to. That truck never let me down, unlike other things, and I still miss that truck to this day. What about me, Kevin? Do you ever miss me? Amy asked softly. Of course, Amy, I said sarcastically. I miss you with every bullet. Amy sighed, but I kept going. Besides, how could I miss you? You're still here. Kevin, please, can we talk? I just got out of the hospital 2 weeks ago, she pleaded. I'm sorry to hear that, and I wish you a speedy recovery, I replied indifferently. But I don't see how your health concerns me anymore. You made it clear years ago that I wasn't enough for you. Kevin, please, Troy's dead. That night, I almost died too. Yeah, I heard. His little stunt in the garage nearly took you with him, I said. I guess those Hummers really are bad for the environment. Maybe you should have convinced Troy to go hybrid. That's not funny, Kevin. I'm not trying to be funny, Amy, I said, rubbing my chin. I'm tired. Maybe we should just go our separate ways. Kevin, please, she begged. Let's just go inside for a few minutes. I need to talk to you. I sighed and motioned toward the door. As Amy struggled to stand, I noticed how tall she still was, but her face had changed. It wasn't just the plastic surgery, something else was off. In the fading light, I saw she was using a cane, leaning heavily on it. I quietly picked up her gym bag as she climbed the steps. Opening the door, I thought, this is going to be one hell of a conversation. Amy and I sat at the dining room table. Under the light, I saw how different her face was. One side was frozen, with her eyelid drooping, and the corner of her mouth pulled down. The size of her lips only made the unevenness worse. She kept dabbing away a little saliva with a handkerchief. It was a stroke, Kevin, Amy began. Carbon monoxide poisoning did it. I was lucky the maid came early or I would have died. One side of my body is weak, and my short-term memory's shot. It gets worse when I'm tired. I'm sorry to hear that, Amy. How are you doing now? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Kevin, that's why I'm here. I need money. I nearly choked on my coffee, sputtering it onto the table. It took a few coughs to clear my throat before I could clean up the mess. You've got to be kidding me. I'm sorry for your situation, but I'm barely getting by myself, and you know why. Amy avoided my gaze, looking down. Besides, I continued, didn't you have assets from your time with Troy? Last time I saw you, you were decked out in more jewelry than a rapper. Amy wiped the corner of her mouth again. It's all gone, Kevin. Troy pawned everything trying to keep the creditors off him before the collapse. What little was left got seized by bankruptcy attorneys. After Troy's self-destruction, the cops turned the house into a crime scene. I just got back in last week and only managed to grab this gym bag of clothes. I stared at her, emotions I thought were buried threatening to surface. What about social services or disability? I asked, trying to stay calm. I applied, but most programs take 90 days to review, and they already told me my injuries don't qualify for full disability, so I won't get much help, Amy explained. And none of Troy's old friends are willing to help you? Amy let out a bitter laugh. No, not anymore. None of them want me around. They're scared I'll hit on their husbands for money. Honestly, I can't blame them. After the divorce, I burned a lot of bridges, and most of our mutual friends sided with you. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. All right, Amy, sell the Camry. It's still worth something. The Camry was never mine, Amy said, her voice shaking. Troy bought it for me, but the title was in King One Developer's name. The bank took it too. A surge of anger welled up. Amy, you got that car barely 4 months after we moved here. You started seeing Troy before the ink on the mortgage was even dry. Kevin, Amy turned away. Troy and I didn't get together until 6 months after I started working for him. I couldn't help myself. Oh, my mistake. I didn't mean to suggest your virtue was compromised by waiting an extra 2 months to jump into bed. Kevin, don't you think I know I messed up? This is hard for me too. I never wanted us to end up like this, Amy said, looking at my distant expression. Amy, do you really want to dive into this? Yeah, Kevin, why not? I waved my hand. They say the truth sets you free. Go ahead, try. It's not about trying, Kevin. I just want you to know that none of this was your fault. It was all me. I got swept up in it. You didn't do anything wrong. At first, it was great. When I started at King One Developers, I was treated like royalty. Troy always picked up the tab. For once, I didn't have to worry about prices or counting change. He gave me attention, and suddenly I was surrounded by important people. They made me feel like I was somebody. You were somebody, Amy. You were my wife, my partner since we were kids. Wasn't that enough? I see that now, Kevin. I just wish I'd realized it then. It all started when you left for that 3-day charter flight. Troy invited me to a political fundraising dinner, $2,500 a plate. My meal alone could have covered 2 months of our mortgage. Did you get chicken or fish? I asked, smirking. Kevin, stop. I'm being serious, Amy sighed. Troy had been sweet for weeks, but this was different. He bought me a $2,000 evening gown, and he didn't even flinch at the price. Everyone thought I was his girlfriend and treated me like a VIP. We sat with a former vice president. I got swept up in the glamour, the power. I felt like I was on top of the world. By the end of the night, we ended up in the parking lot, having fun in his Hummer. The valet must have gotten quite a tip, I said sarcastically. Kevin, please, it wasn't like that. What do you call it, Amy? Classy? Having fun in a parking lot sounds more like something you'd see on a street corner. Did you crack open the moonroof to make it more romantic? Amy blushed, but pressed on. I felt so guilty the next day, terrified you'd find out. When you came home, I stuck to you like glue to make up for what happened with Troy. Wow, Amy. And here I thought you were just showing gratitude to all the plumbers. Kevin, I promised it wouldn't happen again. I swore I'd be the best wife. But Troy kept apologizing, saying we'd had too much to drink, that it was a mistake. He didn't want to lose me as an employee over one slip-up. He was so smooth, and I fell for it. A week later, I went with him and some other executives to the coast for a big project. He chartered a private jet. It was so exciting. On the way back, Troy landed a multi-million-dollar deal. There was celebrating, drinks, hugs, and then we ended up in the plane's bathroom. I couldn't help myself. Amy, I see all that glamour really weakened your resolve, I said coldly. Kevin, I'm not proud of what I did. I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you how it happened. After that trip, I gave in and enjoyed the lifestyle. Gambling, fine dining, jewelry. At first, only when you were away. But then it became lunches and midday rendezvous. Eventually, I started resenting you, feeling like our life wasn't enough. That's when I realized I'd put our marriage at risk. The saddest part is, it wasn't even Troy's money. It was King One Developers' corporate funds. Troy didn't have any real money of his own. Most of his paycheck went to his ex-wives. Even his Hummer was leased. The house, the Rolex, almost everything was in the company's name. Amy looked at me. So that's my sad, pathetic story, Kevin. Do you have any questions? Just one or two, Amy. I folded my hands on the table. If you had the life you wanted, why didn't you divorce me right away? Why drag it out for a year and a half, cheating in secret? What was so thrilling about balancing life between Prince Troy's wealth and your pauper husband? Amy looked away. Kevin, at first, it was because I didn't want to hurt you. We've been together since elementary school. You were my best friend. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that it would end soon. You'd never find out, and we'd still live happily ever after. But it became harder to let go. All these new things made me feel like royalty. For the first time, I wasn't standing outside, looking in. I kept delaying ending things with Troy. I was like a fly drowning in honey. She wiped the saliva from the corner of her mouth again. When you found me in Troy's bedroom, I panicked. I knew there was no going back, that you'd never forgive me. But at that point, half a life with Troy seemed better than nothing. How about choosing the truth, Amy? I said sarcastically. We might have worked things out if you'd come to me after the first time. Kevin, believe it or not, I was planning to end it in 2 days. Even if you hadn't caught us, I was going to quit my job and leave Troy. That Friday, cold turkey, I was ready to dedicate myself to you, to our marriage. I'd already printed and signed my resignation letter. It was sitting in my desk drawer. Nice try, Amy. Makes me regret barging in on you and Troy. 2 more days and none of this would have happened. I was such a fool, I said, my voice dripping with irony. Let me guess, you don't have that letter with you, do you? No, Kevin, I can't prove it, but it's true. After I moved in with Troy, I got bored. Everything revolved around him. I started having more fun on my own. All right, Amy, here's a classic question. Was Troy better in bed than me? I watched her hesitate, searching for an answer. If I wanted someone to lie to me, I'd pay for it. So don't lie. Just tell me the truth. Amy sighed. Kevin, you were my first. And before Troy, you were the only one. We were always good together. But Troy, well, he was older and more experienced. He had been with a lot of women. Over time, I felt indebted to him for everything he gave me. So, payment for services rendered? I asked. I wasn't a promiscuous or anything, if that's what you're implying, Amy said, trying to smile. What do you call someone who exchanges favors for goods or services? I asked. That was different, she replied stiffly. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, I said. Whatever, Kevin, but no, we never did it in our house or our bed, Amy exclaimed. Never? Not even once? I pressed. No, Kevin. Troy wanted to, but for me, it wasn't about the affair or even Troy or you. It was about the lifestyle. For the first time, I was living first class. I thought I was rising above everything. Amy glanced around the room. I didn't want to go back to this, I continued. So Troy didn't mind sharing you for a year and a half while you were cheating on me. Was he as generous with others after you moved in? Troy was very possessive, Kevin. He wanted me to cut you off after we started, but I ignored him. I never had a relationship with both of you on the same day. Troy loved parading me around, but hated it when I talked to other men. The irony is, he had women all over the place, girlfriends, escorts. When he traveled, he'd invite call girls. But when it came to other women, he liked it to be just us. Once I gave in with his second wife. They were still on good terms. But I didn't enjoy it. She was like a caricature. A trophy wife, bleach blonde and empty-headed. I couldn't resist. So, what exactly was the difference between you two? Touch? Feel? Amy wrinkled her nose. As sad as it sounds back then, I thought she had it all. The money, the looks, the front row seat to everything I wanted. I used to laugh at people like that. Then I became one of them. Plastic and hollow. I smirked. Did I pay for all of Barbie's makeup, or did Troy cover the silicone? Amy wrinkled her nose again. Kevin, it wasn't your money. Troy hid the surgery costs in some project budget. I'm sure the auditors will want it back. You've always been a good negotiator, Amy. Maybe you can use some of those bedroom tricks Troy taught you to settle with them. Kevin, I can't live like this anymore. I just want to disappear. I shook my head. Amy, if you want to go out like Troy did, I can't help you. I have a garage, but no car. Sorry. I shouldn't have kept making cheap jokes about Amy. It felt like kicking someone when they were down, but I couldn't stop. Deep anger kept bubbling up. I thought I was over her, but was I? They say love and hate are two sides of the same coin. I couldn't sort out what I was feeling, whether it was disgust at the person Amy had become or anger at what she had done to me, to us, to our relationship. Kevin, Amy said, I know a lot has happened, but before all this, we were always there for each other. I really need you now. We've been together most of our lives, and we've both grown and changed. Can't we try to keep what we had? I stood up. Amy, I'd rather chew tinfoil and shave my head with a cheese grater. I finished my now cold coffee and added, I don't know who you are anymore, and I just don't trust you. How do I know you haven't stashed away a bunch of money or jewelry? Maybe you're just waiting for everything to blow over so you can laugh at me again and leave me with nothing. Amy slumped in her chair, her hope fading. I'll never leave you again. Please, I need your help. I'm sorry, Amy. I can't take that risk anymore. It's too much. Can't or won't? She asked quietly. What's the difference? I replied. Just then, the door opened and Lourdes walked in. She was wearing her nursing uniform, floral and practical, just back from her afternoon shift. Oh, hi, Lourdes said, taking in the scene. She walked over to Amy, leaned slightly, and extended her hand. I'm Lourdes. And you are? With some effort, Amy raised her hand to shake. I'm Amy. Lourdes froze for a second, then recovered, eyeing Amy's cane, limp arm and the look of her face. Bell's palsy? Lourdes asked, pointing to Amy's face. I beg your pardon? Amy replied. Bell's palsy, Lourdes said professionally. It damages the nerve that controls the facial muscles, causing paralysis, common with herpes. I don't have herpes, Amy snapped, then softened. But I can see why you'd think that after what I did to Kevin. I had a stroke. Amy went on to tell Lourdes the full story. When she finished, Lourdes asked to speak to me in the kitchen. Kevin, Lourdes began, we can't just throw Amy out on the street. Okay, I said. I'll call one of Jose's sons. They can drop Amy off at the shelter. Lourdes squeezed my hand so hard I felt her nails. Kevin, you can't be serious. You can't leave someone like her in a place like that. They'd tear her apart. What do you expect me to do, Lourdes? Invite her into our bed? The three of us? You heard me. It wouldn't be Amy's first time with another woman. Or maybe that's your plan. I raised an eyebrow and shot her a mocking look. Lourdes let go of my hand and waved me off. You men are all the same. Put your fantasies away. More like a nightmare, I said. Losing you to Amy would have me sucking on a tailpipe. Whatever, Lourdes rolled her eyes. Amy can sleep on the couch tonight. We'll figure the rest out tomorrow. So, who's this Lourdes now? The Latin version of keep your friends close, but your enemies closer? I asked. I noticed how Lourdes had jabbed Amy earlier with the herpes remark. Lourdes lowered her gaze. Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. It was nasty kicking someone when they're already down. She sighed. Then I remembered. You WJD. It's just one night. You better count the silverware when you wake up. I muttered. Kevin, we don't have any silverware worth stealing, Lords replied. Doesn't it bother you that my ex-wife, with her reputation, is going to sleep in this house? I asked. Lords looked at me seriously for a moment. I know you, and more importantly, I trust you. Besides, if you leave me for plastic and trout lips, you were never mine to begin with. Lords, that's never going to happen. You're stuck with me, I said, kissing her. The next morning at 6 a.m., I was in the kitchen dressed in my maintenance jumpsuit. I wasn't flying that day, but had 3 houses to clean for Jose Maria's wife's company. Good morning, Kevin. Amy stood in the kitchen doorway, wrapped in a blanket. Her hair was tied back, and after a night on the couch, she looked worn out. I only hummed in response, turning my attention to my cup of coffee. Kevin, do you still have our boxes of cards? Amy asked, yawning. Those were your cards, Amy. No, I don't have your postcards anymore. Where are they? She pressed. I burned them, Amy. Roasted marshmallows over them, actually. Sort of like watching our past go up in flames. Oh, Amy said, looking unhappy. We sat in awkward silence for a while. Kevin, I just want to thank you for letting me stay the night, Amy finally said. Don't thank me, Amy. I wasn't thrilled about it. Thank Lords, I replied. Yes, Lords, Amy paused. You and her? I didn't answer. My relationship with Lords wasn't any of Amy's business. Kevin, Amy started, wiping saliva from her cracked lip. I don't know if I said this last night, but I'm sorry. Sorry for what, Amy? Cheating, leaving, taking all the money, ruining our marriage, lying, trying to take more after bankrupting me, coming back to mess up my life, or just missing all the toys Troy gave you? I stared at her, my voice cold. Be specific. I'm sorry I wanted something more than you did, Amy said softly. That sounds more like regret than an apology, I said, standing up and pouring the rest of my coffee into the sink. Tell me, Amy, if the House of Cards hadn't fallen and you still had everything from the last 3 years, would you still be here? Kevin, I'm sorry I left you, I heard her say as I rinsed out my cup. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned around. Amy was standing close to me. I see someone's happy I stayed the night, she said with a hopeful smile. Don't flatter yourself, Amy, I said, brushing her off. Her smile faded, but she persisted. Kevin, I meant what I said last night. I'm yours, only yours. You can have me anytime, anywhere. She held out her hand, waiting for me to take it. I looked at her hand, feeling nothing but a dull ache. I've seen this show before, Amy. I'll pass. I turned away, heading for the door. Later that day, I realized my first major fight with Lords would be over Amy. I just wanted her out of my life to be someone else's problem. But Lords and Maria both lashed out at me. Jose Maria's husband wisely stayed out of sight, avoiding the crossfire. I wished I could have done the same. All their talk about Christian charity, forgiveness, and turning the other cheek sounded great in theory, but in practice, it sucked. 2 Catholic Latina women who believe God is on their side are an unstoppable force. They were firm in their belief that it was our duty to help those in need if we could. Cast your bread upon the waters and all that. They argued that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting what Amy had done. Lords and Maria pointed out that saints had forgiven those who wronged them. Even Jesus forgave Judas for the ultimate betrayal. I'm no saint, I replied, and any resemblance between me and Jesus is purely coincidental. Amy and Maria weren't discouraged. They insisted that since I had once loved Amy enough to marry her, her past loyalty to me, no matter how things ended, meant I should help her now. Good grief, I'd rather deal with a couple of rabid badgers than those 2. Lords dismissed Amy's recent attempt to seduce me, calling it post-traumatic stress from the sudden collapse of her world. She said it was Amy's way of trying to reconnect with a safer past. Lords was better than me. I couldn't buy into that excuse. Eventually, Maria found Amy a job cleaning houses, a far cry from her old glamorous life. The best place we could put Amy was in the mother-in-law apartment above my garage, which Lords arranged. Amy paid a small rent, which helped a little. Lords and Amy sometimes sat together on the porch and talked. I avoided Amy whenever possible. Who wants to relive a train wreck? Lords said Amy kept to herself, worked, went to church, and rarely left the apartment. I had some choice words for where I wanted to send Amy, but I kept them to myself, only muttering them under my breath a few times. In all honesty, Amy never tried to pull any stunts or hit on me again. After a few months, things finally calmed down. One evening, as I returned home from my flights, I saw Lords on the porch talking to an older woman with silver hair. She looked vaguely familiar. I extended my hand to introduce myself, but the woman hugged me tightly. "Kevin, you remember Mrs. Talon?" Lord said, gesturing toward her. And then it hit me. She was the wife of the man who had the heart attack on the golf course that day. The man we'd saved. Now I had a name and a face to match the memory. I let her go to get help while Jose and I performed CPR on her husband. Come on, Mrs. Talon exclaimed, pulling me into the house. "He's been waiting for you all day, and he's as cranky as an old bear." "Who's waiting for me?" I asked, as we entered the dining room. Sitting at my table, surrounded by a pile of official-looking papers, was the man we'd rescued from the golf course. He had silver hair like his wife, was medium build and height, but exuded authority. A cane rested on the chair beside him. "Damn, boy, get over here," the silver-haired man barked. "I'm Boone Talon, and I've been waiting to meet you for a long time." He raised his cane and tapped the chair beside him. "Sit your lucky ass down right here." Boone Talon was a man who expected things to go his way. Feeling slightly intimidated, I sat next to him. He slapped me on the back so hard I almost toppled out of my chair. "Damn, boy, mind if I call you Kevin?" he said without waiting for a response. "I owe you my life. Boone Talon always pays his debts." He tossed a piece of paper into my lap. "Listen up, Kevin. This is a personal services contract. I've got a Learjet 60, and you're going to be one of my personal pilots once you get your certification on it. The contract's for 15 years, with annual raises and bonuses. It renews every year. Whether I live or die, you're set. Just don't crash the damn plane. If you do, you're dead anyway, so no worries about getting paid. Doc says I can't fly anymore, but I need to stay airborne. The Lear stays here. I'll page you. Got it?" I glanced at the paycheck amount on the contract, and my eyes nearly bulged out. It was ridiculous money, like winning the lottery. "Mr. Talon, this is very generous, but..." "But what?" Boone cut me off, his voice rough. "You think my life's not worth a few bucks? Hell, the insurance company should pay you for saving my skin. You kept them from having to cough up my life insurance payout." I was speechless, but Boone wasn't done. "Next," he said, sliding another stack of papers my way. "Here's the deed to this house, fully paid for. Consider it a signing bonus. I can't have my pilots worrying about mortgages when they're flying me around. I need them focused." He paused, then added, "And there's the title for a new F-250 Power Stroke pickup. You can pick it up at the dealer tomorrow. I don't want you standing at some damn bus stop, got it?" Boone tapped his cane and said, "That $1.4 million from Nine Rivers, forget it. My lawyers are handling it. You'll get an apology and a full membership by the end of the week." He then turned to Lords. "We need to get you a nursing license. I've got tutors lined up, and you'll pass the test in 90 days. After that, you'll work at All Saints Hospital in pediatrics and cardiology. In a year, you'll be my flying nurse, and your student loans are fully paid." Lords, shocked, hugged Boone, who chuckled. "Careful, you'll set off my pacemaker." I thanked Boone, but mentioned Jose. Boone grinned. "Jose's covered. He's getting certified on the Lear 65 with a raise. I also paid off his kids' tuition, housing, and loans." Before leaving, Boone added, "Now you two need to get married. I don't like my employees living in sin." Lords and I did get married, though it became a big event at Nine Rivers, organized by Maria and the Latina women, with Boone footing the bill, including a cruise as a wedding gift. Amy was there too. She was doing better, but still needed a cane and had some memory problems. She rented the apartment above our garage, and though I was polite, I kept my distance. She started seeing someone from her church, and I wished them well. My new job brought together my two loves, Lords and flying. Lords sent postcards to Amy from every place we visited, and they'd sit on the porch discussing the details. That would soon change, though. Lords had to stop flying for a while because we were expecting a baby. Soon, I'd have 3 loves,